Chapter 988. Thinking about it carefully, over all these years, there were only a handful of times when his heart had softened, but every time, it seemed to have something to do with this little girl named Gunyanji. Hua Xiaoheng bent down and very gently pulled up the blanket that had fallen down from turning over for Gunyanji. His slightly cold fingers accidentally slid across Gunyanji's neck. It was as if there was an electric current, and a tingling sensation passed through his fingertips and seeped into her skin. Gunyanji opened her eyes again. This time she was really awake. She suddenly turned around and saw Hua Xiaoheng's incomparably handsome silhouette. The dim yellow night light shone from behind him, setting his silhouette with a dark golden background. Every inch was impeccable. Gunyanji's eyes were still sleepy and she murmured sleepily, "You're back?" "I'm back." Hua Xiaoheng's voice was even more magnetic and deep. He naturally lifted the blanket and slept with Gunyanji. Gunyanji's heart couldn't help skipping a beat. By the time she reacted, Hua Xiaoheng had already hugged her in his arms and was sleeping on his side next to her in the most comfortable position. One arm automatically went under her neck and pillowed her head. Gunyanji's mind was still a bit hazy. She couldn't tell if it was his left or right arm, but she still remembered that his right arm had been injured not long ago. She quickly raised her head with difficulty and refused to use his arm as a pillow. "It'll hurt you." Hua Xiaoheng kissed her cheek. "It's fine. It's already healed." Reaching out, he pressed her head down and placed it back on his arm. Gunyanji stopped struggling because the familiar person and the familiar scent was by her side. The unprecedented sense of security once again made her let go of the vigilance she always carried. Drowsiness surged and Gunyanji fell into a deep sleep. Hua Xiaoheng thought about what happened that day, especially the sensational hype on the internet as well as the 5-minute high-definition video. He originally wanted to ask if it had anything to do with Gunyanji. But seeing how tired she was, he didn't ask again. Anyway, what did it matter if she was the one who did it? There must be a reason why she had to do it, so he would ask tomorrow. Not only were the cabinet and the Senate paying attention to the commotion on the internet, but the military was also watching. Hua Xiaoheng and General Ji had found out about this when they were in the military base. At that time, General Ji had discussed with Hua Xiaoheng whether they should get the Special Operations Forces to investigate who did it. They didn't want to seek justice for Prime Minister Tan, but they couldn't be kept in the dark and not even know who did it. Hua Xiaoheng did not agree at the time. His reason was that this was a domestic matter, and there was currently no indication that this matter was related to foreign forces, so it was not convenient for the Special Operations Forces to intervene. He also reminded General Ji that the cabinet had a secret service department, which was similar to the Special Operations Forces. The difference was that the Secret Service Department was in charge of domestic affairs, unlike the Special Operations Forces, whose scope of authority was overseas. This big incident that happened on Weibo would definitely require the Secret Service to investigate. Besides, it was the head of the cabinet who was involved in the accident. Whether it was emotional or personal, the Secret Service should be the vanguard. General Ji felt that it made sense, so he didn't bring it up again. Actually, as soon as Hua Xiaoheng saw the video, he could roughly guess who did it. Thinking of this, Hua Xiaoheng smiled. He touched his lips to Gunyanji's forehead and fell asleep with her. When the two of them woke up, it was already past 10 in the morning on the 15th of the Lunar New Year. The official residence was quiet. The thick, soundproof, milky yellow gold velvet curtains with white polka dots hung low to block out the light and sound from the outside world. When Gunyanji woke up, her mind went blank for a second before she snapped back to reality. She tilted her head to see the man sleeping soundly beside her. Gunyanji's gaze couldn't help but be drawn to his long, thick and dense eyelashes. They were like two soul-stirring arcs that covered his handsome face. Gunyanji couldn't help but reach out and gently touch Hua Xiaoheng's long eyelashes. However, as soon as her hand touched them, Hua Xiaoheng suddenly opened his eyes. Gunyanji sheepishly retracted her hand and instinctively found an excuse. "Let me see if they are fake eyelashes." After saying that, she shut her mouth tightly, regretting that she had spoken without thinking. It would have been better if she hadn't said anything. What was she trying to do by coming up with such a ridiculous excuse? Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. After a while, Hua Xiaoheng took Gunyanji's hand and placed it in front of his eyelashes. "Feel it yourself." Gunyanji was speechless. "Fine." Her fingers curled slightly and quickly touched Hua Xiaoheng's long eyelashes. Her pale fingertips felt like they were being pricked by fine needles. Of course, it didn't hurt or itch, but there was a presence that couldn't be ignored. Just like him, there was a needle hidden in silk floss. "Is it fake?" Hua Xiaoheng chuckled quietly and kissed Gunyanji's cheeks, which were already as red as a little apple. "No. Gun Yinji buried herself in his arms. I was just saying casually. Do you have to take it so seriously? Wu Xiaoheng didn't reply. He lifted her head from his arms and held the back of her neck to give her a long and deep kiss. She didn't know if it was because the dopamine emitted by hormones made people feel good, but even when lovers woke up in the morning and were intimate, they didn't notice each other's smell. Gun Yinji was actually very nervous in this area, but because it was Wu Xiaoheng, she didn't think it was inappropriate. Before the kiss ended, Gun Yinji could already feel the tension under Wu Xiaoheng's body. She was so nervous that she didn't move, afraid that she would further stimulate Wu Xiaoheng. Fortunately, Wu Xiaoheng didn't have to do it. He hugged Gun Yinji tenderly for a while, then got out of bed and went to his room to wash up. Gun Yinji finally breathed a sigh of relief and slowly got up from the bed. She also went to the bathroom to wash up and change into a comfortable white cashmere sweater with a blue bear embroidered on the back. She let her half-dry hair down and went downstairs to the dining room for dinner. It was almost 11 o'clock, and the kitchen had prepared brunch for them. Gun Yinji went downstairs and saw many orderlies coming and going in the official residence. Only then did she realize that the spring festival was over, and the soldiers on vacation had also come back to work. Good morning, Miss Gu. Good morning. Happy New Year? It's pretty good. I just came back from my hometown. Thank you, Miss Gu. Miss Gu, I brought some pecans from my hometown. I've already shared some with my comrades. There's still a bag left just for you. A younger orderly walked over with a small cloth bag and stammered as he spoke to Gun Yinji. It was always good to be remembered and cared for. Gun Yinji was overjoyed and accepted it with a smile. Thank you. I really like pecans. She wanted to pay, but the young soldier had already run away happily. He only said, if you like it, I'll bring more for you next time. Gun Yinji was speechless. After thinking about it, she took the pecans back to her suite and went to the small fridge to pick out a large box of Godiva chocolates. She went downstairs to the orderly's duty room and immediately saw the young soldier working in front of the computer. Gun Yinji walked in and placed the box of chocolates on his table. She smiled. Thank you for the pecans. Try my chocolate. It's delicious too. The young soldier looked up in surprise to see Gun Yinji smiling sweetly. He couldn't help blushing and wanted to refuse, but when he saw Gun Yinji's large, hopeful eyes looking at him encouragingly, he instinctively took the exquisite box of chocolates and looked at it. Godiva? This chocolate is very expensive. My sister loves it. He exclaimed in surprise. Okay, I still have some. If you like it, I'll give you 2 more boxes. Gun Yinji smiled and nodded at him before walking out of the orderly's duty room. When they sat down in the dining room, Wu Xiaoheng put down the newspaper in his hand and asked calmly, Where are the pecans? Gun Yinji was speechless. I just happened to pass by and saw them. Wu Xiaoheng slowly poured milk for Gun Yinji. I'll peel them for you. Gun Yinji remembered how she used to smash the pecans with a small hammer when she used to eat them. Wu Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang, and Zhao Liangzi saw this and each took a pile. They used their fingers to crush the skin of the pecans as if they were practicing their strength. Gun Yinji missed the days when Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi were also here. Hu Xiao, when is brother Xiong coming back? Gun Yinji knew Yin Shixiang was home on vacation, so she could ask. Zhao Liangzi was on a mission, so she didn't ask him anything. Soon. Wu Xiaoheng's lips curled into a smile. He poured maple syrup on the pancake made in the kitchen and pushed it to Gun Yinji. Today's brunch was Western food. As usual, Wu Xiaoheng had steak in front of him, but today it was Chinese charcoal grilled steak. Gun Yinji had pancake, milk, and scrambled eggs. Not long after they started eating, they heard Yin Shixiang shouting. Wu Xiao. Wu Xiao. What's going on? I've been worried all day and night. Yin Shixiang rushed into the dining room and froze when he saw Gun Yinji there. Wu Xiaoheng elegantly raised his wine glass at him. Big Xiong, have you had lunch? No, just in time. Give me the same thing, Yin Shixiang said to the orderly at the door. The orderly immediately went to the kitchen, and Yin Shixiang sat down next to Gun Yinji. He originally wanted to ask about his marriage report being rejected and rewritten, but seeing Gun Yinji there, he instinctively changed the topic. What do you mean, what's going on? Wu Xiaoheng asked slowly. Yin Shixiang's Adam's apple bobbed. He suppressed the anxiety in his heart and said, It's on Weibo. It's such a big deal. Our Prime Minister. Diske, this is really an international joke. Gun Yinji's hand shook, and the golden syrup on the pancake flowed onto the white bone china plate in front of her. This was the 6th update, sent to the leader of the Single_Sing Alliance. Chapter 989. Wu Xiaoheng glanced at Gun Yinji. You don't like pancakes? Gunyanji quickly shook her head. It's pretty good, but the maple syrup is a bit too sweet. She took a bite of the pancake. The golden syrup-coated pancake and scrambled eggs combined to taste as delicious as an omelette. It was indeed delicious. Hua Xiaoheng picked up a napkin and casually wiped a bit of syrup from her lips. Yin Shixiang's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He suddenly asked, Nianji, where did you spend New Year's? Gun Nianji turned to look at him and raised a brow. Here. What? Yin Shixiang nodded and glanced at Hua Xiaoheng. He secretly gave him a thumbs up. Hua Xiaoheng ignored him and said dryly, Little Zay is out on a mission. Nianji is helping us here in contacting Little Zay. She was taught by Little Zay so the two of them can work together more efficiently. So that's how it is. Yin Shixiang instantly felt that he had misunderstood. He had spent New Year's like he was soaking in honey. His vigilance and acuity had greatly decreased. Yin Shixiang felt a bit guilty when he thought of Zhao Liangzi, who had been sent to the Cape of Good Hope in Africa for bullying Hua Xiaoheng. He was happy, but he felt guilty for letting his brothers do all the work. He quickly sat up and said to Hua Xiaoheng, Hua Xiao, can I come back now? Don't you want to rest a bit longer? Hua Xiaoheng put down his knife and fork and down the red wine. Why don't you come back after you have a son? No. It's okay. Yin Shixiang quickly waved his hand. We have to take it step by step. We just proposed. He chuckled. Gun Yanji also smiled. She thought Brother Xiong's sweet expression was very interesting. Hua Xiaoheng, however, thought Yin Shixiang's smile was annoying. Brother Xiong, I saw your proposal with Qiqi. It was so beautiful. Qiqi was very touched. Gun Yanji noticed Hua Xiaoheng's cold attitude towards Yin Shixiang and quickly changed the topic. Yin Shixiang rubbed the back of his head and said dreamily, I think it's pretty good too. I thought about it for a long time before I came up with this idea. That diamond ring is also very pretty. Gun Yanji pointed at the middle finger of her right hand. Qiqi will look very good wearing it. Yin Shixiang smiled. Qiqi has already returned to school. Alright, now that you've graduated, will Qiqi be living alone? The school will probably arrange a new roommate for her. Gun Yanji also missed living with Ma Qiqi. She was her good friend. The two of them were having a friendly conversation about Ma Qiqi's roommates, but Hua Xiaoheng seemed out of place by himself. He didn't pay much attention to it. He had just finished the remaining charcoal grilled steak when he heard his phone ring. He put on his Bluetooth headset and answered the call. What's up? Chief, General G is on the phone. Connect it. Hua Xiaoheng stood up and returned to his suite upstairs. Gun Yanji and Yin Shixiang were having a heated conversation, so no one followed Hua Xiaoheng upstairs. They also knew that he had gone to deal with official business. If Hua Xiaoheng didn't call for them, they couldn't follow. Returning to the suite on the second floor, Hua Xiaoheng walked into his study and closed the door. He turned on his computer and began a video call with General G. General G, what's going on? Xiaoheng, do you know about what happened on Weibo last night? General G's expression was very serious. There was no one behind him. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. What is it? What did the Secret Service say about this? The Secret Service is currently investigating. Apparently, Weibo was hacked yesterday, but the method was so clever that no traces were left behind. Also, Weibo's global server restarted the backup data and directly erased a lot of direct clues. They're also having a headache. Hua Xiaoheng was silent. Was there a loss of national secrets? Not really. General G laughed at Hua Xiaoheng's words and said humorously, Of course, if the Prime Minister's private affairs are considered national secrets, then it is indeed a leak. Hua Xiaoheng laughed and leaned back on the tall swivel chair. Then what are you worried about? You didn't see the news? General G froze. I thought you knew. Hua Xiaoheng was slightly embarrassed. He had slept with Gun Yanji last night, so he felt very secure. He had actually overslept. However, his expression didn't change as he casually turned on the wall-mounted TV in the study to take a look. Every channel was discussing yesterday's Weibo incident. Other than the 5-minute short movie, there was another matter that was the focus of all the major TV stations, media outlets, and the internet. Someone had started a vote to ask Prime Minister Tan to admit his mistake and resign. There were already tens of millions of shares and hundreds of millions of likes and support. With such a scale of data on the internet, Kai Songyin's water army had been completely drowned in the sea of people. Not even a shadow could be seen. What was public opinion? This was public opinion. Lincoln once said that you could fool everyone for a certain amount of time, or you could fool a portion of the people all the time, but you couldn't fool everyone all the time. You can fool all the people some of the time. Time and Saul the Tiet fool all the people all the time. Tan Dongbang had appeared as a dark horse in the election. For someone like that to win the election, he had to have a noble and perfect persona in order to gain the voters' approval in a short period of time and defeat the political veterans. Once this persona collapsed in the eyes of the voters, the backlash would be very quick. In other words, they would hate you as much as they loved you at the time when they found out you had lied to them. People who didn't have a solid foundation and only wanted to rely on crooked methods to reach the top would often discover that the higher they climbed, the harder they fell. Tan Dongbang having an affair in his marriage wasn't particularly bad for a prime minister, but the Wuxia citizens couldn't tolerate his affair with a Japanese person who was suspected of being a spy. This was also why even elderly people who didn't go online often followed their grandchildren to vote online. Xiaoheng, did you see that? Even our military and the Senate can't ignore the popularity of this kind of post. General Ji spread his hands. Old Long already called me this morning, and we discussed it for a whole 2 hours. From General Ji's words, Xiaoheng knew that these two big shots must have reached some kind of agreement. General Ji, go ahead and I'll listen. If there's anything you need me to do, I'll do it immediately. Xiaoheng expressed his unconditional acceptance. Okay. General Ji nodded. It's like this. Old Long also called Tan Dongbang this morning and hoped that he could make a gesture. It would be best if he could admit his mistake and resign. Xiaoheng raised his brows. He refused. Ha, you know Tan Dongbang very well. General Ji laughed mockingly. Yes, he refused. He said that he was framed and that the entire video was fake. Someone was messing with him, so he refused to step down. Xiaoheng pursed his lips and clicked on a program with the mouse in his hand. And then? Old Long said that since he refused to resign, then there's nothing they can do. Today, which is right now, the upper and lower houses of the Senate are holding an emergency meeting to vote on the issue of dissolving the cabinet and restarting the emergency election. Xiaoheng was a bit surprised. Dissolving the cabinet? Restarting the election? Is there enough time? Regardless of whether there's enough time, we can't allow someone with Tan Dongbang's image to sit in the position of prime minister. Don't forget that according to our nation's constitution, the prime minister is the head of the country. General Ji's voice was very heavy. Did your special operations forces not receive any news? Actually, Xiaoheng had received news yesterday that Tan Dongbang's short video had already been downloaded by countless countries' media and intelligence agencies. This was, of course, a devastating blow to the national image of the head of the Wuxia Empire. So he had to step down. Only when he stepped down would the short video in the other party's hands become worthless. Because the only valuable part of this short video was Tan Dongbang's identity as the Wuxia Empire's prime minister. If he was just a normal person, who would care about this short video? Just like I said earlier, I don't think Prime Minister Tan's short video is a national secret. So even if foreign intelligence agencies obtain it, it's not worth it for us to mobilize our field personnel to take action. Xiaoheng couldn't hide the disdain in his voice. General Ji nodded. Okay, he won't be our prime minister very soon. The two of them were talking when Secretary Chao suddenly walked in and bent down to whisper something to General Ji. General Ji beamed and said to Xiaoheng, "All right, the upper and lower houses of the Senate just voted unanimously to dissolve the cabinet and restart the election. I think Bai Jianqing is really going to be the prime minister this time." Because the election had been restarted, there weren't many qualified people. Bai Jianqing, who had just narrowly lost to Tan Dongbang, was definitely a popular candidate. It was the 7th chapter. Today there were 7 chapters in a row. Flipping forward, there were a total of 7 chapters and 20,000 words. You can vote for your monthly and recommendation votes now. P.S. Today is Monday, don't forget to recommend your votes. It's already the end of the month and important things have to be said 3 times. Monthly votes. Monthly votes. Chapter 990. Xiaoheng didn't have any opinion on who the prime minister was. As long as it was elected and the voters supported it, he would support it. General Ji, I understand. Since the election has been restarted, I will have the Special Operations Forces field personnel around the world pay attention to the local VIPs. I won't let them disrupt the election. This was Xiaoheng's responsibility and the reason General Ji had specifically sought him out today. General Ji was very satisfied that Xiaoheng knew what to do without the need to say it. Okay, I'll leave the outside matters to you. Next, to prevent any accidents, the military will mobilize a group of reserve personnel to monitor the election and voting situation in various places. Last time, they used the Special Operations Forces Central Control Room to monitor the election and voting. This time, Old Long wants you to help monitor it again. General Ji picked up the kung fu teacup on the desk with a smile and took a sip of the fragrant Dahong Pao tea. Wu Xiaoheng raised his eyebrows. You want to use the central control room? Then I'll be clear. This time only my people can monitor it. The people outside, whether it's the Senate, the Cabinet, or the military's 5 major military regions, can't interfere. That's for sure. General Ji agreed immediately. Last time, it was a mess of people who entered the central control room. After Wu Xiaoheng came back, he carried out a major purge. Even now, there were still many people locked up in the military police. They couldn't be released without clarifying the situation. That's good. Wu Xiaoheng nodded. Then please sign a special order with Speaker Long, and I'll make the arrangements immediately. Wu Xiaoheng knew that he had to follow the rules when doing things in the country. He had to follow the necessary procedures and he had to ask for the necessary proof. General Ji had already prepared it. He took it out for him to see and smiled. I'll have Secretary Chow send it to you. Can you rest assured now? General Ji, you must be joking. I'm just trying to shut other people up. Wu Xiaoheng smiled slightly and looked at his watch. It was already noon. The news is starting. I'm going to get someone to deploy the reserve troops. Since we've decided to restart the election, we only have a week to prepare in case of emergency. General Ji picked up his military cap and put it on. Xiaoheng, I'll leave the foreign affairs to you. Don't worry, Chief. Wu Xiaoheng stood up and gave a standard military salute. General Ji's video call was quickly cut off. Wu Xiaoheng turned on the wall-mounted TV in the study and saw that all the TV stations had interrupted their normal broadcasts to broadcast the Senate's special decision live. He thought for a moment, pressed the intercom and said to the orderly outside, "Ask Colonel Yin and Miss Gu to come to my study." The orderly responded loudly and quickly ran downstairs to the dining room to call Yin Shixiang and Gu Nianji up. Yin Shixiang and Gu Nianji walked in one after the other. The two of them seemed to be in a good mood as they chatted and laughed from time to time. Wu Xiaoheng glanced at them and said dryly, "Close the door." Yin Shixiang quickly closed the study door and asked in surprise, "Wu Xiao, what's the matter?" "Yeah, I'll watch TV." Wu Xiaoheng clasped his hands together and leaned back in the tall, soft chair. Gu Nianji. They looked at each other, unsure of what Wu Xiaoheng was up to. "Sit. Why are you standing?" Wu Xiaoheng pointed at the 2 swivel chairs in front of his desk. Important breaking news. Yin Shixiang's heart tightened and he stopped laughing. Is it related to Prime Minister Tan's incident? Wu Xiaoheng grunted, but his eyes quickly swept over Gu Nianji's face. Gu Nianji's expression was very calm. If it weren't for her butterfly-like eyelashes that trembled almost imperceptibly, even Wu Xiaoheng wouldn't have been able to see the anxiety in her heart. Of course, Yin Shixiang didn't notice anything strange at all. He smiled as he sat down on the swivel chair on the left and waved at Gu Nianji. "Come, Nianji. Sit here." Gu Nianji smiled as she sat down on the swivel chair on the right. At that moment, the huge wall-mounted TV on the opposite wall began to show the image of the Senate. In the glorious and resplendent hall of the Senate, the seats were arranged in a fan shape from low to high, surrounding the small podium in front of them. The white-haired, ruddy Speaker Long wore a black tuxedo with a snow-white bow tie. He stood behind the podium and began to speak with a serious expression. "Ladies and gentlemen present, and the vast television audience of the nation, hello. On behalf of the upper and lower houses of the Wuxia Imperial Parliament, I would like to first wish the people of the nation a happy Lantern Festival." There was a loud clatter and waves of enthusiastic applause rang out in the Senate Hall. Speaker Long's expression softened, and he paused to wait for the applause to quiet down before continuing. "I'm sure everyone already knows about what happened last night, so I won't repeat it here. What I want to emphasize is that we will definitely pursue the instigator of this incident to the end and use legal means to protect the interests of the nation and its people. However, due to the huge international and domestic impact this incident has caused, as well as the conclusion reached after careful technical verification, we are certain that Mr. Tan Dongbang no longer has the qualifications and integrity to continue serving as our nation's Prime Minister." There was complete silence both inside and outside the TV. Not only the people of the nation but people from all over the world were probably paying attention to this special meeting of the Wuxia Imperial Parliament. Unfortunately, after discussion, Mr. Tan Dongbang refused to resign as Prime Minister of the Wuxia Empire. Under these circumstances, in order to protect the dignity of our nation's leader and the dignity of our nation, the upper and lower houses of the parliament unanimously voted to authorize the dissolution of the cabinet and restart the general election after an emergency meeting this morning. As soon as Speaker Long finished speaking, Yin Shixiang jumped up and screamed, "What? Dissolve the cabinet? Doesn't that mean we won't have a government after the Lunar New Year?" "It's just dissolving the cabinet. How is that a government?" Gun Yanji glanced at Yin Shixiang calmly. "Did you exclude the parliament and the military from the government?" "What I meant was the administrative department, okay? A logician?" Yin Shixiang glared at Gun Yanji. "I was just saying. Do you have to be so serious? Can you just say something like that?" Gun Yanji felt a bit guilty, so she didn't let Yin Shixiang off. "This is a basic rule for national affairs. Don't paralyze the entire government just because you say something." Fine, I can't win against you in an argument." Yin Shixiang waved his hand angrily and turned to look at Hua Xiaoheng. "Hua Xiao, what do you want me to do?" Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "As the deputy chief of the Special Operations Forces, inform our field personnel around the world. The operation code will be Nighthawks. Pay attention to the relevant local people and don't let anyone have the possibility of disrupting our general election." "Yes, Chief." Yin Shixiang stood up and saluted before striding out. The door slammed shut, and the sound made Gun Yanji's heart tremble. She pursed her lips and slowly stood up. Smiling, she said, "Hua Xiao, you're busy? I'll be going too." With that, she turned to leave. Hua Xiaoheng didn't stop her. He silently watched her open the door to the study and walk out. Not long after, he heard the door to the suite open and close outside. Hua Xiaoheng looked down at the keyboard in front of him and typed 2 commands to check the network data of the official residence for the past 2 days. As he expected, the network data in Gun Yanji's suite was a bit abnormal. Hua Xiaoheng picked up the mouse and opened the surveillance program to take a closer look. Gun Yanji had connected to the external system from the Special Operations Forces intranet. Although it was difficult to find out what she had done after she went out, it was still possible to see her first destination. At least, what did Gun Yanji need to access the server of a library in a small town in Europe from the intranet? Hua Xiaoheng's hands flew across the keyboard as he quietly erased all traces of Gun Yanji's online activity from last night. After turning off the computer, Hua Xiaoheng went to Gun Yanji's suite. The living room of the small suite was quiet. The curtains were closed silently, and the sun shone through the snow-white curtains. Dust particles could be seen dancing in the light. The bedroom door was open and Hua Xiaoheng walked in. Gun Yanji was concentrating on typing program after program on the computer. Hua Xiaoheng came up behind her and bent down to prop his arms on the desk in front of Gun Yanji. He pulled her into his arms and asked calmly, "What are you doing?" Gun Yanji was so scared that her whole body trembled and she almost jumped up. Hua Xiaoheng reacted quickly and pressed down on her shoulders to sit down. Only then did she not bump her head against Hua Xiaoheng's chin. "Let go of me." Gun Yanji moved her shoulders uncomfortably and wanted to escape from Hua Xiaoheng's grasp. "What if I say no?" Hua Xiaoheng leaned forward and gently brushed his cheek against Gun Yanji's earlobe. Half of Gun Yanji's body went numb, but she was too scared to feel this unusual touch. "What are you doing here? I still have something to do." Gun Yanji tried her best to speak calmly, but her voice trembled slightly at the end to show her true feelings. Hua Xiaoheng tilted his head to look at her and sighed softly. He reached out with his large, warm hands to hold both of Gun Yanji's hands. "What are you afraid of?" "I'm not." Gun Yanji pretended to be relaxed and forced a smile. Her plump, curvy lips curled up, but the dimples at the corners of her lips didn't show. Hua Xiaoheng still maintained his posture and held both of her hands. He looked at her silently until he saw a crystal bead of sweat drip from the corner of her forehead. He could imagine how much mental pressure she was under. Hua Xiaoheng sighed and kissed her cheek. He whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. Everything will be fine." What could happen? Gun Yanji was about to cry. She couldn't understand how Hua Xiaoheng knew she was the one who did it. She had clearly erased all traces of it. "Yanji, you can trust me." Hua Xiaoheng's arms tightened and he pulled her into his embrace from behind. "Tell me, what did you do?" This was the first update. There were 2 updates today, so let me rest for a day. I'll continue with the 3rd update tomorrow and start increasing the monthly votes. Let me remind you about recommendation votes and monthly votes. The 2nd update was at 7 p.m. Chapter 991. Could she trust him? Gun Yanji thought about it anxiously. She wasn't afraid of Hua Xiaoheng scolding her, but she was worried that telling him would put him in a difficult position. Gun Yanji knew better than anyone else what kind of person Hua Xiaoheng was. In his heart, the country and the military were first, then his comrades and colleagues were second. Gu Nianji used to think that she was equal to Hua Xiaoheng's mother, Song Jining, in third place, but now she wasn't so sure. As for what she did yesterday, although she had a good reason and had vented her anger, she had indeed damaged the Wuxia Empire's national image. When Tan Dongbang's video was circulating online, he was still the Wuxia Empire's prime minister. In other words, the leader of the country had been completely destroyed by her. Gu Nianji closed her eyes. Also, because Gu Nianji's estate dispute had been closed previously, other than a few people, the public didn't know that Gu Yanran was Japanese. The name, Kasahara Naoko, had been specifically labeled in the video to ensure that Tan Dongbang would be removed from office. She had also included the Chindu encyclopedia for people to search for her. Now that the public knew and were outraged, the higher-ups couldn't cover it up even if they wanted to. Therefore, this incident was a slap in the face to many of the higher-ups who were on good terms with the Tan and Kai families. Especially those who voted against Tan Dongbang's impeachment and opposed his impeachment, they must hate her to the core now. This group of people originally made up the majority in the Senate. If they knew that this incident had something to do with Gu Nianji, they might blame it on Hua Xiaoheng. When Gu Nianji was hesitating, Hua Xiaoheng stared at her without blinking, trying to figure out what she was thinking. "Nianji, what are you worried about?" Hua Xiaoheng pulled her up and sat on her swivel chair. Hugging her on his lap, he held Gu Nianji's hand in his and wanted to click on the mouse again, but Gu Nianji used all her strength to hold it down. Gritting her teeth, her pretty little face was pink. Because she was nervous, she was like a pink glutinous rice ball that had just come out of the pot. It was sweet and delicious with a touch of red. Hua Xiaoheng was worried that her ignorance would cause big trouble, but he also knew that she wasn't someone who didn't know what was important. Therefore he wanted to know why. Why did she do this? After waiting for a long time, Gu Nianji still didn't speak. She turned to look at the corner of the bedroom. There was a long and slender plum vase placed under a rosewood floor lamp stand that was as tall as a person. There was no flower arrangement. It stood there like a still painting. Hua Xiaoheng changed his question. "Nianji, why did you Photoshop Kai Songyin as well?" Hua Xiaoheng let go of Gu Nianji's hand and stopped trying to click the mouse. Gu Nianji breathed a sigh of relief and moved her wrist, which was stiff from Hua Xiaoheng's grip. Her gaze wandered as she said, "How would I know? Anyway, you're still arguing with me?" Hua Xiaoheng pinched Gu Nianji's elegant little nose and turned her around. The corners of his lips curved slightly. "The soundtrack is pretty good." Gu Nianji, she couldn't help but curl her lips and secretly want to laugh. "Why are you connecting to the server of a library in a small town in Europe?" Hua Xiaoheng asked again. He felt Gu Nianji's entire body tremble. He held her waist. "Can you tell me now? I've already erased all traces of you going online." Gu Nianji jerked her head up, her large, black eyes filled with disbelief and shock. "What? You erased all traces of me going online?" Did he know what he was doing? Hua Xiaoheng wanted to laugh at Gu Nianji's shock, but he also felt a bit sad. It was true that he was very strict with her, but he never wanted her to have to deal with it alone when she was in trouble. However, he also knew that ever since the incident in Germany, Gu Nianji's unreserved and unconditional trust in him had disappeared. If it had been in the past, Hua Xiaoheng wouldn't have had to waste time to ask. Gu Nianji would have babbled about the entire incident herself and then proudly asked him for kisses and hugs. However, Gu Nianji's heart was a complete mess. She was like a castle after the end of the world with broken tiles and walls everywhere. She never thought that this time Hua Xiaoheng would actually not sternly lecture her and hand her over. Instead, he would help her deal with the aftermath. Did he know that by doing this, he would become her accomplice? Hua Xiaoheng looked at her quietly. After a while, he frowned and said solemnly, "Nianji, if you don't want to say it, then I'll guess okay?" "Gu Nianji, why did you choose to upload the video last night? Is it because of what happened last night that you want to make the first move?" "Gu Nianji, was what happened last night too much for you to bear?" "Gu Nianji, QAQ. Was it related to me?" "Gu Nianji, oh, asterisk asterisk asterisk, oh." It seemed like she couldn't hide it anymore. However, she still denied it. "No, it had nothing to do with you." However, when he saw Gu Nianji's large, jade-like eyes suddenly narrow, Hua Xiaoheng knew he guessed right. "It really had something to do with me? Otherwise, why are you so nervous about denying it?" At that moment, Hua Xiaoheng felt an indescribable feeling and impulse in his heart. His blood rushed through his veins and his body swelled. It was like his heart was full of love and joy that could no longer be contained and was about to spill out at any moment. However, other than his slightly heavy breathing, he didn't show it at all. He sat there quietly and looked at the girl in his arms. Even though she said she didn't love him anymore, she still didn't hesitate to stand by his side when it came to matters related to him and fight for him. This little girl who had grown up with him had a kind of fearless courage that made him addicted. Gu Nianji looked up and murmured, "They're too despicable." It was really for him. Hua Xiaoheng kissed her all of a sudden and quickly undid her clothes in his hands. He carried her and threw her onto the bed. Gu Nianji flopped around on the bed like a little white fish and was turned over and over again by him. She became his meal and he ate to his heart's content. When they were done, Gu Nianji felt like her waist was about to break. Hua Xiaoheng went to the bathroom to clean up. Gu Nianji laid on the pillow and scolded him, "Don't fold me in half next time. My waist is about to break in half." Hua Xiaoheng felt his body heat up as soon as he heard this. He looked up and sighed softly, then said calmly, "If you keep talking, I won't be able to control myself again." Gu Nianji was speechless. She narrowed her eyes as she watched this strapping man calmly put on his clothes and said word by word, "Major General Hua, are you blaming me?" Hua Xiaoheng glanced at her and sat on the edge of the bed. "Where does it hurt? I'll rub it for you." "Thanks." Gu Nianji rolled away wrapped in the blankets. "I'm going to fall apart if you rub it again." Actually, Gu Nianji was only stating facts and didn't have any intention of seducing him. However, Hua Xiaoheng felt like every word she said was seducing him. This girl was getting more and more capable. Hua Xiaoheng sat back on the sofa beside the bed and crossed his legs. He sighed and suddenly said, "How are they despicable?" Gu Nianji wanted to pretend to be asleep and didn't move at all. Hua Xiaoheng rubbed his hands. "Do you want to fold me in half again? If you don't tell me, I'll take it that you want to." Gu Nianji. Her entire body was sore as hell. She turned to look at Hua Xiaoheng and whispered, "I'll tell you. You can't be angry." "Why do you think I'll be angry?" Hua Xiaoheng wasn't in a rush to ask for the reason now. He felt that it was more important to understand Gu Nianji's psychological state. Gu Nianji looked down and shrunk further into the bed with the blankets wrapped around her. After stammering for a while, she finally said weakly, "Kai Songyin found someone to write about you and me. I was 12 years old." Even though Hua Xiaoheng was experienced and knowledgeable, he didn't expect this to be the reason. He frowned. Was it that blogger? He remembered that after watching the video yesterday, he had also looked up the original blogger and found out that he was a terrible writer for new media. Therefore, he was certain that this person's Weibo account had been hacked. He really didn't expect that there was a reason his account had been hacked. This original blogger wasn't innocent. Gu Nianji grunted and nodded like she was pounding garlic. "How did you know?" Hua Xiaoheng asked calmly. This was the question he was most concerned about. How did Gu Nianji know that Kai Songyin had hired someone to do this kind of thing? Gu Nianji blushed and mumbled, "I thought it was a bit weird that you suddenly became an internet celebrity, so I made a search program and put it on Weibo to see if there were any strange phenomena." Then she found the novel that had just been uploaded. It became a logical thing to do. Gu Nianji whispered, "But you don't have to worry. I've deleted all the texts and I've reformatted that person's computer. I've also searched the entire internet, but there's no backup in the cloud mailbox. That person might still remember some phrases, but I think Kai Songyin will make him shut up." Hua Xiaoheng was both angry and amused when he heard this. This little trick was quite thorough. He quietly listened to Gu Nianji finish speaking and looked up at her calmly to praise her. "Well done, Gu Nianji." Her eyes suddenly lit up. Even the bright sunlight shining in through the white gauze curtains couldn't outshine their beauty. They were so dazzling and bright, like the first splash of fresh green and pink in spring. They carried the scent of spring. Not only did he not scold or blame her, but he even praised her. It was different from what she had imagined. Gu Nianji sat up wrapped in the blankets and moved a few steps in Hua Xiaoheng's direction. Her eyes sparkled. "Really? You're really praising me?" "Yeah." Hua Xiaoheng crossed his legs. "But there are still areas that can be improved. Don't be too proud." "But I really damaged the nation's image." Gu Nianji wanted to be remorseful, but her beautiful curvy lips curled up on their own. She couldn't suppress it no matter what. Hua Xiaoheng smiled and said gently, "I don't see it the same way as them on this. I never thought that Tan Dongbang could represent our nation's image." This is the second update. Let me rest for a day and continue with the third update tomorrow. I'll start adding more monthly votes. Let me remind you about the recommendation tickets and monthly votes. P.S. The Major General now has two groups. One is a group with official subscriptions. The group number is 146941331. Full subscriptions are required to enter the group, and the administrator will verify your fan value. Recently, another group for the Major General was opened. Readers who don't know their fan value can join the group first. There's no need to verify their fan value. The group number of the double core group is 657793292. Chapter 992. Oh, really? Gunyanji became suspicious. You're not saying this to comfort me, are you? I don't joke about this kind of thing. Huo Xiaoheng's expression was calm as usual. From the first time Kai Songyin took the initiative to upload Tan Dongbang and Gu Yanran's video online, I stopped treating him as the leader of the country. Although Kai Songyin had blurred out the man and the surrounding scenes in the video, Huo Xiaoheng and the others had the original. Once this kind of thing was uploaded online, the consequences weren't something you could bear. Even without Gunyanji, someone else would restore the image. Tan Dongbang's personal image was long gone, let alone the image of the country he represented. So last night, Huo Xiaoheng had already refused to help Tan Dongbang clean up the aftermath before he knew it had anything to do with Gunyanji. He wasn't a saint. Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin had set him up once and almost caused him to lose the most important person in his life. He would remember it for the rest of his life. He was already giving face to the military in the country by not taking the initiative to slap them in the face. Now that Gunyanji had helped him vent his anger, he couldn't be happier. Who cared if Tan Dongbang's face would bleed? However, Gunyanji didn't need to know about this. Huo Xiaoheng was still a bit worried that Gunyanji didn't hold back and hurt herself. So his expression was very serious and his gaze was like lightning. Gunyanji didn't dare to raise her head again and make a confession in front of him. Huo Xiaoheng looked at her quietly for a while before hearing Gunyanji say quietly, "I was already very careful. It's not as serious as you say." No. Huo Xiaoheng stood up and folded his hands behind his back in front of Gunyanji's bed. His tall figure was against the light, and his majestic aura couldn't be looked at directly. Gunyanji readily accepted his advice. I've never thought of myself as the best in the world. Huo Xiaoheng extended his right index finger. First, it's good to use a proxy to go online, but don't forget that any proxy will leave traces when going out from my network. So you have to learn to bypass the local surveillance first. She had indeed neglected this point, which was why Huo Xiaoheng had discovered it. Gunyanji quickly nodded in acknowledgement. I don't have many opportunities to be a hacker. I'll definitely be more careful in the future. You're still doing it? Huo Xiaoheng's expression darkened. He scolded her sternly, do you know how lucky you were this time? Last time in Germany, they underestimated your ability so they let you into the internal network to exploit a loophole. This time I will deal with the aftermath for you. But you can't do it more than 3 times. Don't even think about having a 3rd time, because you won't be so lucky again. Gunyanji gaped in shock. She didn't know what to do with Huo Xiaoheng's lecture. Huo Xiaoheng's attitude changed too quickly. For the first time, Gunyanji understood the difference between professional face slapping and amateur face slapping. I'm not scolding you because you shouldn't have done it. I'm scolding you for not being careful enough. Huo Xiaoheng leaned forward. Also, if you don't want to do it, then don't give the other party any leeway. Don't think that Kai Songyin will shut the original blogger up. Instead, she'll make him talk and tell her their original plan. Gunyanji's eyes widened. No way? She's that crazy? Tan Dongbang's cabinet has already been dissolved, and the interim election will be held next week. Kai Songyin will go crazy if Tan Dongbang loses. She won't be Kai Songyin if she doesn't drag us down with her. Huo Xiaoheng took a step forward coldly. So think about how you can stop the original blogger from talking. Gunyanji was so scared that her entire body went haywire. She quickly lunged forward and sprawled on the bed. She hugged Huo Xiaoheng's thigh and begged, Huo Xiao, don't. I beg you. Although that person is despicable, he doesn't deserve to die. Don't make a mistake. I can turn myself in. Huo Xiaoheng was so angry that he laughed. He looked down at Gunyanji, who was sprawled on the bed and hugging his thigh. She had completely forgotten about him. What did you think I was going to do? You? Didn't you tell him to shut up? Gunyanji murmured. What kind of person would shut up? Only a dead person. Didn't they always do that on TV? Huo Xiaoheng looked up at the ceiling and suddenly said, Stop watching those boring TV shows. Gunyanji was speechless. Huo Xiaoheng took a snow-white wool blanket and wrapped it around Gunyanji. He said calmly, In your heart, am I that kind of person? Gunyanji obediently let him wrap her up and shook her head rapidly. Of course not. Then what did you mean just now? I was out of my mind just now. Gunyanji admitted honestly. She reached out from under the wool blanket and gently tugged on the corner of Hua Xiaoheng's shirt. Hua Xiao, teach me. How can I make that original blogger shut up? Of course, she didn't want to destroy him physically. Think about it yourself. Hua Xiaoheng pushed her hand away. If you don't want to add to your crime, what do you need to do? Gun Yanji's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly understood. She looked up at Hua Xiaoheng. I know. Hua Xiao is amazing. Her beautiful curvy lips curved into a perfect angle for a kiss. Hua Xiaoheng resisted the urge to lower his head and kiss her again. Hua Xiaoheng turned around and left without saying another word. Gun Yanji sprawled on the bed and thought for a while. She put on her clothes and sat in front of the computer. She opened Weibo and was instantly shocked by the wave of restarting the election. Her alternate account that she used to initiate the vote also had tens of thousands of fans. Gun Yanji blushed and pursed her lips. She quietly opened another alternate account. Hackers loved having countless alternate accounts the most. She still used a proxy when she logged into Weibo this time. However, after Hua Xiaoheng's reminder, Gun Yanji was very careful to avoid the local surveillance. She had to admit that the surveillance of the Special Operations Forces, especially the network surveillance of Hua Xiaoheng's official residence, was as complicated as a spider's web cave. She was still dizzy after studying it for a long time. In the end, she finally resorted to trickery and used the method that Zhao Liangzi had taught her to avoid the local surveillance. She used a proxy and then circled around to Weibo. It took him almost 20 minutes to complete the set. She looked at her watch and raced to the original blogger's Weibo account to research his 2 true fans. In the end, she hacked into the account to see the IP address of the 2 true fans, and immediately gave up. These 2 fans were actually the original blogger's sock puppet, so there was no need for her to pretend to be true fans. She looked again and saw that the original blogger was online. Gun Yanji directly sent a private message to the original blogger as a passerby. Blogger, I remember that I saw you post a very interesting essay here the other day. How come it's gone now? The original blogger was feeling terrible and immediately replied, how would I know? It was originally a short essay, but someone hacked the account and turned it into a video. Gun Yanji immediately replied, oh? How did that happen? I was wondering why I didn't have time at the time and didn't finish watching it. By the time I wanted to watch it, it was already gone. The original blogger sent a string of. Gun Yanji sent another private message. Does the blogger still have any essays saved? Let me see it. I promise I won't leak it. The original blogger replied instantly. My computer has already been formatted. How would I remember what I wrote? Gun Yanji was both relieved and worried when the blogger said that. She was relieved that no one in the world would remember that disgusting essay anymore. She was worried that the blogger had no evidence and Kai Songyin and the others would use it against him. Gun Yanji was still pondering how to lead the conversation to this problem and didn't expect the blogger to take the initiative to private message her. Perhaps it was because he was under too much pressure and didn't dare say these things to people in real life, so he poured out his heart to a stranger on the internet. Yuan Weibo, did you know? It was clearly someone else who contacted me, but now there's trouble and my account has been hacked. They actually want to sue me. Gun Yanji sock puppet X? Yuan Weibo blogger, someone paid me to write that essay. Later, my account was hacked and the essay turned into a video. The Prime Minister and his wife in the video want to sue me. Gun Yanji's professional habits kicked in when she saw it. Gun Yanji's sock puppet X. Huh. You want to be sued by the Prime Minister and his wife? Then what do you plan to do? Do you want to get a lawyer? Yuan Bo blogger, I don't have money. I can't afford a lawyer. Gun Yanji's sock puppet X. It can't be, right? If they really sue you and you don't hire a lawyer, you'll go to jail. Didn't you say someone paid you to write the essay? You didn't pay enough to hire a lawyer? Yuan Weibo blogger, smile. JPG, they only gave me the initial payment, not the rest. I thought it through. Worst comes to worst, we'll just go our separate ways. No one can take advantage of me. They think I'm an idiot. I know the person who asked me to write the essay is an employee of the Prime Minister's wife's company. They're robbers crying thief, but I'm not easy to bully. Although he didn't remember what he wrote, he still remembered the outline and purpose that person gave him. Gun Yanji saw this and secretly admired Hua Xiaoheng for standing high and seeing far. As expected, Kai Songyin was using the excuse of suing the blogger to try to make the situation even worse. She still didn't let Gun Yanji and Hua Xiaoheng off. Gun Yanji's sock puppet X. I sympathize with the blogger, but if you expose this, won't you offend not only the Prime Minister and his wife, but also the military? Is that necessary? Yuan Bo blogger was silent for a while before replying, I know, but I have nowhere else to go. Since he was going to die anyway, Yuan Bo blogger had to fight for himself no matter what, even if it meant slandering two innocent people. Anyway, since he was paid to write this kind of essay, there was no such thing as fairness and justice in his dictionary. This kind of person was extremely selfish. Kai Songyin and her people found this kind of person because birds of a feather flock together. This was the first update. It was the third update today, so the monthly votes would start increasing. Let me remind you about the recommendation votes and monthly votes. It should be the first update at 1 p.m. So the monthly votes would be 3,300 and 3,600. The third update would be at 7 p.m. Chapter 993. Gu Nianji keenly sensed that as long as Kai Songyin and the others insisted on suing the original blogger, the blogger would have no choice but to expose the fact that someone paid him to write an article to smear Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's name. He would say that he was the scapegoat and had been framed. At that time, even if everyone knew that it was defamation and slander, once the outline and purpose of the article was released, the onlookers' attention would be successfully diverted. Gu Nianji was furious and anxious. She wanted to reach out from the internet and beat up the blogger. However, she couldn't do that. She also couldn't destroy the blogger with her unrestrained body. What should she do? How could she make the blogger shut up without breaking the law? Gu Nianji sat in front of the computer and thought about it. She suddenly realized that she had made a mistake. Why did she keep thinking about starting with the original blogger? Although the original blogger wasn't innocent, he wouldn't cause trouble for her. Selfish people were the best at protecting themselves. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary and he had no way out, the original blogger wouldn't come out to talk about the article. He wouldn't have to go to court and appear in front of the public. As for whether he would write in the future or in private, it was none of their business. It also wouldn't cause irreversible social impact. After all, everyone already knew Hua Xiaoheng's identity. Therefore, her thinking had really made a mistake. If she wanted to give this blogger a way out, she should have started with Kai Songyin instead of beating the original blogger up. She remembered that the original blogger had said that Kai Songyin wanted to sue him. Therefore, he chose to reveal that Kai Songyin's subordinates had contacted him to write an article. Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang were in too much debt to worry about and didn't need to worry about their image. They didn't care if the original blogger exposed that they had something to do with this. With the lack of direct evidence, they would definitely have an advantage in the law and wouldn't be held accountable for this matter. However, Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng were different. Two innocent people were splashed with dirty water just like that. Hua Xiaoheng's image in the eyes of the public would suffer irreparable damage. His career would definitely stop at the rank of Major General. Gu Nianji understood the crux of such a vicious plan to cut off one's escape route and gasped. She covered her mouth as her mind raced. Therefore, the key to solving the problem lay with Kai Songyin. She needed to do something to prevent Kai Songyin from suing the original blogger. Not only could he not sue the blogger, he could not even sue the hacker who uploaded the video. This matter had to be resolved outside of the court. But what could she do to prevent Kai Songyin and the others from suing? From a legal point of view, there were only two circumstances that prevented the other party from suing. One was to dispel the other party's thoughts of suing. This was like taking drastic measures. The other was that even if you sued, the court would not be able to file a case. Out of professional habit, Gu Nianji first considered the possibility that the court could not file a case. According to the laws of the Wuxia Empire, civil and criminal complaints that met the legal requirements would be accepted and filed on the spot. If the complaint cannot be determined on the spot whether it is in compliance with the law, it will be decided whether to file the case within the time limit stipulated by the law. If the case could not be determined within the time limit prescribed by law, then the case could be filed first. Also, Kai Songyin and the others were going to be involved in a lawsuit, so the lawyer would definitely be the best in the industry. For example, Kai Songyin's niece, Kai Xingnan, was a lawyer who had returned from the United States. Also, Kai Songyin's brother, Kai Xingnan's father, was one of the few top Chinese lawyers in the United States. He had once helped the President of the United States, who had been involved in a scandal and impeached by the grand jury, win a lawsuit. With such a luxurious team of lawyers, if they still could not successfully file a case, then these elites in the legal world should all go to hell. It was obvious that the second situation was impossible. If Kai Songyin and the others wanted to sue, they would definitely be able to file a case. Then there was only the first possibility. Under what circumstances would Kai Songyin and the others voluntarily not want to sue in court? Gu Nianji stood up from the computer and walked around the room with her arms crossed. She racked her brain to think. After thinking for a long time, she still had no clue. Feeling defeated, she slumped on the sofa and hugged her head with a bitter expression. She almost wailed out loud. At that moment, her phone suddenly rang. Gunyenji took it and looked. Was Hijichu? That was great. Someone handed her a pillow just when she wanted to doze off. She could ask Hijichu. Gunyenji felt that Hijichu was probably an even more powerful lawyer than Kai Xingnan's father. Also, he was younger and already had such great achievements. He would definitely have a bright future. Gunyenji happily swiped her phone to answer the call. Happy New Year, Professor He. Her voice was crisp and sweet. It was filled with the joy of reunion and heartfelt feelings of dependence. When Hijichu first heard Gunyenji's voice, he actually fell into a trance for a moment. It was as if he had returned to the days when Gunyenji was by his side. The Gunyenji who trusted and relied on him had really returned. Professor He? Gunyenji didn't hear the person on the other end for a long time. She thought she had misread the number. Professor He, is that you? Yes, it's me. Hijichu composed himself and smiled faintly. What is it? Miss me a lot? Of course I do. I miss you so much that all my hair is about to fall off. Gunyenji laughed exaggeratedly. She crossed her legs and rolled around on the sofa. You're exaggerating. Hijichu raised his eyebrows. Tell me what's the matter. You must have encountered something to miss me like that. Gunyenji was speechless. After a while she chuckled. Professor He, you're so amazing. I can't hide anything from you. Then it really is something? Hijichu's voice was cold and clear. It was like lemon ice in summer. It actually calmed Gunyenji's agitated emotions. Gunyenji nodded. Professor He, where are you? Are you back on campus? Hijichu had just gotten out of the car. He looked up at the professor's building in front of him. I'm here. I just arrived. Oh, then you go ahead. We'll talk when you're free? Gunyenji said politely. Hijichu shook his head. Go ahead. I'm free. For you, anytime, any place you are free. As long as I'm here. Gunyenji thought about it and suddenly realized she couldn't bring herself to say it. How could she ask Hijichu about this? Not to mention how Hijichu would feel if he heard about it. Gunyenji wanted nothing more than to keep it a secret and not let anyone know about it. Gunyenji's mind raced and she immediately changed the topic. She mumbled, You had a really long vacation. How is your family? Hijichu froze. After a long while, he finally nodded when he came out of the elevator. His cold voice was a bit hoarse. They're all good. Nyenji, do you miss home? He was elated and wondered if Gunyenji's memory had been restored. Or did she remember something? Gunyenji's mind was filled with Kai Songyin's mess. She didn't understand Hijichu's emotions at all. She sat up from the sofa and smiled. Now why would I miss home? I spent the new year at home. Spent the new year at home? Hijichu completely froze. Where's home? The military camp. Gunyenji blurted out. The military camp is my home. She actually wanted to say Huashao, but she swallowed the words when they were on the tip of her tongue. She also felt a bit embarrassed. Hijichu understood. His expression grew colder as he opened the door to his suite. You spent the new year at Huashao's place? I actually spent the new year at Auntie Song's place, Gunyenji said carefully. On New Year's Eve, Auntie Song came to pick me up for New Year's Eve dinner at her new place, so I went. Huashao was on duty. However, after New Year's Eve, she moved to Huashaoheng's official residence. Gunyenji didn't dare tell Hijichu about it, but she ended up causing a huge disaster the moment she arrived. And then? Hijichu pushed his suitcase into the room and sat on the sofa. He sighed softly. Long journeys were really tiring. Although he was in good health, he couldn't handle such a long journey. Fortunately, this time he had arranged everything for his family. He would stay here and accompany Gunyenji until they grew old. Gunyenji didn't expect Hijichu to continue asking. She didn't want to tell the truth, but she also didn't want to lie. After a while, Hijichu completely understood. You were at Huashao's official residence? Gunyenji almost knelt down. In her panic, she couldn't think of a good excuse. She could only nod and quickly explain. Huashao went to the grassroots level since the first day and only came back this morning. He's gone to work now. Do you need something from him? Hijichu was silent. Then I'll come pick you up? Nyenji, didn't you break up with Huashao? Why are you still staying at his house? Do you still have feelings for him? Or did he force you? Gunyenji was speechless. This question was too complicated. Gunyenji looked up at the sky and was speechless for a while. Then come pick me up. I'll go back to my own house. She had bought a second-hand house in Hipingli. Xiaoheng had installed strict surveillance there so it should be safe. He Jichu breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, I'll come pick you up right away. He didn't even have time to change out of his travel clothes. He grabbed his car keys and went downstairs. He sped all the way to the main entrance of the Special Operations Forces encampment. He Jichu didn't have a pass, so of course he couldn't go in. He didn't want to go in, so he didn't even get out of the car. He called Gun Yanji from the entrance. Come out. I'm here. Gun Yanji packed her things and left Xiaoheng a note before rushing downstairs. When she was at the entrance, Xiaoheng learned that she was leaving. He quickly rushed downstairs and chased after her. Why are you suddenly leaving? Gun Yanji quickly said, Professor, he is back. He's taking me back to Hipingli. Xiaoheng's expression didn't change. He didn't try to persuade her to stay. I'll walk you out. He called for a car and drove all the way to the encampment entrance with Gun Yanji. Jichu saw a car drive over. He got out of the car and leaned against the door. He saw Xiaoheng get out of the car with Gun Yanji. Jichu squinted and put his hands in the pockets of his camel cashmere coat. He stood up and nodded stiffly at Xiaoheng. Happy New Year, Xiao. Happy New Year, Professor He. Xiaoheng smiled as he held Gun Yanji's hand and her small suitcase. Yanji is spending the New Year with me. I'll have to trouble Professor He to pick her up. You're welcome. It's my job. Jichu looked at Gun Yanji coolly. It's good that you're here with Xiao. I'm relieved that you're safe. Before Gun Yanji could speak, Xiaoheng interrupted. Of course. Professor He is always elusive, and Yanji can only stay here with me. Jichu pursed his lips but didn't retort. He played with the phone in his pocket with one hand and raised his chin at Gun Yanji. Let's go. Gun Yanji let go of Xiaoheng's hand and smiled. Goodbye, Xiao. Xiaoheng nodded. Remember the problem I asked you to think about. If you can't think of a solution, remember to call me. I'm thinking. Gun Yanji waved at Xiaoheng. I'll think of something. Jichu sat in the car with a solemn expression. He waited for Gun Yanji to put on her seatbelt before speeding off like an arrow. Gun Yanji looked around and saw that Jichu had changed another car. It was another world-class luxury car. Gun Yanji clicked her tongue. Professor He, even if you have money, that's not how you spend it. Jichu looked straight ahead as he drove. He didn't want to talk to her at all. Gun Yanji was enjoying herself by herself. She sat next to Jichu and began chattering about interesting things from her new year, especially Ma Qiqi and Yin Shixiang's engagement ceremony. Professor He, you didn't see it? It was so beautiful. Alright, I have a video. Can I show it to you later? Jichu's expression relaxed slightly. He looked at her dryly. What kind of engagement ceremony can make you this happy? Professor He, it's not that I'm happy. It's that Brother Xiong can make Qiqi happy, Gun Yanji said seriously. It's a friend's engagement ceremony. As long as they're happy, I'm happy. Jichu snorted and skillfully turned the steering wheel to get on the highway. Why does that sound so hypocritical? How am I hypocritical? Gun Yanji glared at Jichu. That's really what I think. It's someone else's engagement ceremony. Of course, it's fine as long as they're happy. What does it matter if I like it or not? I'm just a passerby B. Passerby B? Then who's passerby A? Jichu glanced at her. Don't tell me it's Xiaoheng. Gun Yanji asked. What's wrong? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Jichu was annoyed. Passerby A and B are a match made in heaven. Are you still unable to let go of Xiaoheng? Gun Yanji. Why hadn't she thought about it from this angle? Was that what Xiaoheng meant when he said passerby A and B? Although Gun Yanji tried her best to suppress it, her mood miraculously improved. When she was in a good mood, her mind was especially clear and agile. When she got out of the car, she actually had a whole plan in mind. How to stop Kai Songyin from thinking about suing in court. Gun Yanji thought she already knew what to do. This was the second chapter, which was 4,000 words long and included 3,300 monthly votes and 3,600 additional chapters. Today was the third chapter, so the monthly votes would start increasing. Let me remind you about recommendation votes and monthly votes. The third chapter was at 7 p.m. Chapter 994. Based on Gun Yanji's understanding of the Tans, the only person who could stop Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang's crazy parents-in-law's final trick was one person. Their precious daughter, Tan Guiran. Gun Yanji had very complicated feelings toward Tan Guiran. Up until now, Tan Guiran hadn't done anything truly bad. Unlike Gu Yanran and Wen Shui, the damage these two had done to Gu Nianji was substantial and irreparable. Gu Nianji would never reconcile with them. Tang Guiren was even better than Su Piaohong and Gui Suyao. Although she had hurt Gu Nianji the most, she had hurt her the most. However, Gu Nianji knew deep down that Tang Guiren couldn't be blamed for that incident. She had a good father and a good mother to pave the way for her. She only needed to be responsible for being as beautiful as a flower and elegant. Even when it came to Hua Xiaoheng, this girl had always been secretly in love with him. She had never openly provoked him like Su Piaohong. More importantly, Tang Guiren played the violin well. Gu Nianji had heard Tang Guiren's performance on Christmas Eve, and it was truly like the sound of nature. The zither was the voice of the heart. If a person who studied the zither had too many thoughts, the sound of the zither would not be pure. Music was the same as other arts. To achieve the highest level of achievement, one had to be pure or even pure. One must have a transcendent heart to be able to make real artistic achievements. If an artist was too sophisticated, his works would inevitably be full of craftsmanship. It could be said that Tang Guiren had been very well protected by her parents. She completely separated herself from the crowd and felt like she didn't fit in. That was why she could play the piano so well. What if I leave the protection of my parents? When Gu Nianji went to the kitchen to pour He Jichu a cup of coffee, she thought about it. Tang Guiren probably wouldn't be able to survive. Tang Guiren was a true daughter flower, beautiful but soft. Without support she would die. She was destined to walk from the arms of her parents to the arms of her husband, and then spend the rest of her life under the protection of her husband. As for himself, his English name was Sirius. In Chinese it meant night epiphyllum or the queen of the night. It could also be called a cactus because the epiphyllum was a plant of the cactus family Dianthus. The night epiphyllum looked white and soft, but in fact, its vitality was extremely tenacious. Think of the cactus blooming in the desert, they belonged to the same sect. Gu Nianji deeply felt that this was a true reflection of herself. She had no parents or relatives, but she grew up safe and sound with Hua Xiaoheng by her side. Unlike Tang Guiren, Gu Nianji had never thought about living under Hua Xiaoheng's protection for the rest of her life. She was a cactus epiphyllum belonging to the desert. Not only was her vitality tenacious, but her entire body was covered with thorns. If anyone wanted to kill her, she would kill them first. It was that simple. Gu Nianji suppressed her sympathy and carried 2 cups of coffee out of the kitchen. She placed them on the coffee table in front of He Jichu. Professor He, black coffee your favorite flavor? Gu Nianji made herself a cappuccino with sugar and milk. He Jichu brought it over and downed it in one gulp. I'm jet-lagged today so I'm very tired. I don't want to drive back. Can I stay here for the night? Gu Nianji glanced at He Jichu and nodded quietly. I'll prepare a guest room for you. He Jichu sat on the sofa and watched Gu Nianji bustle around like a hard-working bee. His heart felt warm and fulfilled. Just like that, he leaned against the sofa and slowly fell asleep. When Gu Nianji came out of the guest room, she saw that He Jichu had already fallen asleep on the sofa. The setting sun shone through the gap in the curtains and scattered golden spots on the cherry wood floor. It had the calmness and leisure of the quiet years. Gu Nianji took a blanket and gently covered He Jichu's body. Then she walked to her bedroom and closed the door. She picked up her phone and called Speaker Long. Speaker Long had once said that if she wanted to apply for the Senate Secretariat, she could call him. Gu Nianji knew that this wasn't a good time. Speaker Long must be crazy busy. But she couldn't wait. Even if she knew Speaker Long was busy, she still had to call. Speaker Long was really busy. Gu Nianji called 10 times before Speaker Long finally picked up her call. Nianji? I'm sorry, I'm very busy today. I left this phone in my study and didn't bring it with me. Speaker Long's voice was clearly tired. Gu Nianji quickly cut to the chase. Speaker Long, I know you're busy. I'm just calling to help you. You want to help me? Speaker Long smiled and sat down to catch his breath. He took a sip of tea. How can you help me? Have you decided to apply for the exam? Gu Nianji nodded. Yes, I've decided. But I heard that the exam is still a month away. Since you're so busy right now, can you let me intern by your side? I can help you prepare for the interim election. I can also familiarize myself with the work process there. Once I officially pass the exam, I can start work immediately. Speaker Long thought about it and thought it was fine. The Senate had many internship slots to begin with. Gu Nianji was a master's student in law at B University and an outstanding graduate who had graduated early. She had also received his recommendation to apply for the Senate Secretariat, so it was only natural for her to intern at the Senate. Speaker Long was also very short on manpower right now. He wanted to try and see if Gu Nianji was as outstanding as he thought she was. Because Special Assistant Yang had once mentioned to Speaker Long that Gu Nianji was very outstanding, but she didn't rely on herself. More importantly, she relied on standing on the shoulders of giants. Although Special Assistant Yang didn't say it explicitly, Speaker Long already knew that he was talking about He Jichu and Huo Xiaoheng. One of them was Gu Nianji's master's tutor in university, and the other used to be her guardian. He was also the youngest major general in the military and had tens of thousands of subordinates all over the world. Okay, if you're willing, you can come to the Senate for your internship tomorrow. Follow me and I'll personally arrange work for you. Speaker Long began to ramble. You know, right? The election is going to be held in 2 weeks, and the Senate is going crazy with work. Of course I know this is the hot news these 2 days. I'm afraid everyone in the country knows about it. Gu Nianji chuckled. Then I'll come to work tomorrow? Okay, come directly to my office tomorrow. I'll go talk to Special Assistant Yang now and ask him to arrange work for you. Speaker Long knocked on the table. He was very happy. Not only was the talent he had chosen talented, but she also knew how to handle things and volunteered to find work. From Speaker Long's perspective, this was already half the battle. The other half would depend on Gu Nianji's performance in the specific work. For Speaker Long, the successor he identified must not only have attitude, but also work quality. Only attitude without quality wouldn't do. Of course, quality without attitude would also be difficult to accept. Speaker Long and Gu Nianji finalized tomorrow's matters and immediately notified Special Assistant Yang. Special Assistant Yang had also been very busy these past 2 days, and he really wanted to find someone to help him. However, the candidate he was optimistic about was his junior from high school, Rong Mingxing, who was now a 4th-year student in the B University Faculty of Law. But forget it, since Speaker Long said Gu Nianji would follow him, then there would be no conflict with Rong Mingxing. They were all interns anyway, so Special Assistant Yang had more than enough to get a spot. Gu Nianji put down the phone and saw that the lights were already shining outside the window. Night had fallen. Ijichu was sleeping soundly. Gu Nianji looked back and didn't wake him up. She planned to go to the kitchen to make something to eat. Just then her phone rang again. It was Huo Xiaoheng's exclusive ringtone. Nianji? Gu Nianji replied, Yes, Huo Xiao, what's up? Huo Xiaoheng's voice was very calm. Is Professor He still at your place? Is there anything else? He must have come to check on Gu Nianji because He Jichu entered Gu Nianji's house and didn't come out the entire afternoon until it was dark. Gu Nianji whispered, Professor He is asleep. I don't want to wake him up. Huo Xiaoheng was speechless. It's okay. Professor He is a gentleman. Gu Nianji softly dispelled Huo Xiaoheng's concerns and cleverly changed the topic. She said softly, Huo Xiao, I have an idea. I will go to Speaker Long's place tomorrow to help. Give me 3 days and I will make sure Kai Songyin doesn't dare to sue for the rest of her life. It was the 3rd watch. Today was the 3rd watch, so the monthly votes were going to be added. It was the end of the month, so it was time to remind people about recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 995. Huo Xiaoheng didn't care how Gu Nianji was going to deal with Kai Songyin. Even if Gu Nianji didn't make a move this time, he would. When Huo Xiaoheng heard Gu Nianji relay the outline of the essay that Kai Songyin had asked someone to write, he was already furious. He didn't care that people were trying to smear him. People in this line of work were already mentally prepared. Not only did they already disregard life and death, but they also threw their reputation to the back of their minds. He didn't care about what Gu Nianji cared about. What he really cared about was how the other party had used that method to smear Gu Nianji's name, an innocent 12-year-old girl at the time. He was very strict with Gu Nianji. He could scold her, lecture her, and even make her suffer. But who were Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang? Did they deserve to lecture Gu Nianji? However, he was already used to not showing his emotions. Even if he was furious, outsiders would only see a faint smile or a hint of coldness in his eyes. Therefore, Gu Nianji's concern about not letting Kai Songyin sue wasn't as serious as the fact that He Jichu was sleeping in Gu Nianji's home. Gu Nianji spoke for a long time, but Huo Xiaoheng remained silent on the other end of the line. She was a bit confused. Huo Xiao? Are you still listening? Huo Xiaoheng grunted. With a cigarette in one hand, he turned on the computer with the other and started typing furiously. Gu Nianji heard it and asked curiously, What is it? Are you still busy? Since he was busy, she wanted to hang up and not disturb Huo Xiaoheng. She didn't expect Huo Xiaoheng to say, Little Zay has a signal processing problem that I can't decipher. I don't know what's wrong, but I'm looking into it. Gunyenji was a bit nervous. Is it the signal processing I did at your place? I remember there was no problem. The problem is different every time. You adjusted it last time, but when little Zay and the others changed the frequency, the reception on this side started again. Hua Xiaoheng spoke calmly as he messed up the processed signal and turned it into garbled code. Gunyenji was restless. How could this happen? How about I go take a look tomorrow? It's fine. I'll work through the night and I'll be done. Hua Xiaoheng messed up the signal code even more, treating it as a practice for a surprise attack. Gunyenji couldn't let Hua Xiaoheng work through the night alone. Also, she was the one who left the mess, so she had the responsibility to clean it up. How about this, Hua Xiao? Let me do it. Or I'll work with you to see if we can get a better decoder. No matter what happens on the other side, we'll be able to receive and crack it smoothly. Gunyenji said as she walked to her bedroom and turned on her laptop. I'm online. Send me a portion of the code. I'll encrypt it and send it to you. Gunyenji's network was also monitored by Hua Xiaoheng's department, so they weren't worried about information being leaked through ordinary network operators. Hua Xiaoheng thought about it and only sent a portion of the civilian code to Gunyenji. He paused and said quietly, Nyenji, can we start a video call? Gunyenji, I want to see you, Hua Xiaoheng continued. Gunyenji's hand trembled and she unwittingly started the video call. Hua Xiaoheng's face appeared on Gunyenji's laptop. He smiled at her. Nyenji, I'll have to trouble you tonight. No problem. Come on, let's work together. Gunyenji opened the coding program and began to crack the garbled code. Hua Xiaoheng was also cracking it, but he treated it like a practice question. He did it casually and his wandering eyes kept looking at the room behind Gunyenji. He could see that it was her bedroom and the bed was still clean. It didn't look like anyone was sleeping. It looked like Hijichu was either in the living room or the guest room. Hua Xiaoheng pursed his lips and continued to share his insights and lessons from cracking the code with Gunyenji. Gunyenji didn't have as much experience in this area as Hua Xiaoheng, and her knowledge in this area had been taught by Zhao Liangzi. Now that she discovered that Hua Xiaoheng was even better than Zhao Liangzi, she couldn't help but become even more interested. She was completely immersed in the atmosphere of decoding. She experienced the logic and wonders of the machine language and completely forgot about the time. Before she knew it, 3 hours had passed. It was already midnight and Gunyenji yawned several times. Hua Xiaoheng's heart softened, and he was contemplating whether or not to let Gunyenji go to sleep when a person appeared in the video call. It was a man standing behind Gunyenji. It was Hijichu. He had just woken up and was a bit thirsty. He got up to drink water, but then he heard the sound of typing coming from Gunyenji's bedroom. He turned around and saw the light peeking out from her bedroom door. He knew that Gunyenji was still awake, so he walked to the door to take a look. He saw Gunyenji typing on the computer and she seemed to be video chatting with someone. Hijichu walked in quietly and immediately saw that the person Gunyenji was video chatting with was Hua Xiaoheng. He raised his hand to look at his watch and the veins on his forehead bulged. He walked over to Hua Xiaoheng with a cold expression. It's late. Are you going to let Nyenji sleep? Gunyenji was shocked. She looked up to see Hijichu and quickly said, Professor He, you're awake? Do you want to sleep in the guest room? Hijichu pointed at Hua Xiaoheng in the video call and looked at Gunyenji. His shimmering, sultry eyes were full of anger. Nyenji, didn't you say that you broke up with him? But you went to his house for the new year and now? Gunyenji bit her lip and felt a bit guilty. In front of others, she could say without hesitation that she had nothing to do with Hua Xiaoheng. But in front of Hijichu, who valued her and cared about her so much, Gunyenji couldn't say that now. It was true that she had broken up with Hua Xiaoheng, but Hua Xiaoheng had also forced her to sign a marriage certificate. More importantly, Gunyenji knew that her heart had been warmed up by Hua Xiaoheng bit by bit. She was working hard to reach her goal, but Professor He, she couldn't hide it from him anymore. Hua Xiaoheng looked at the gloomy Hijichu in the video call and said calmly, Since Professor He is awake, please go back. Nyenji is home alone, and it's not convenient for an outsider like you to stay here. Hijichu sneered and ignored Hua Xiaoheng. He only looked at Gunyenji. Nyenji, you're also kicking me out, right? Gunyenji closed her eyes and turned to Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiao, I have something to do. That's it for today. She hung up and turned off the video call. Hijichu had just breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Gunyenji say, Professor He, I have something to say to you. Hijichu suddenly didn't want to listen anymore and turned to leave. I'm sleepy. Let's talk tomorrow. Professor He. Gunyenji stood up as well. Listen to me. I don't want to hide it from you anymore. Hijichu's heart pounded like a drum and his mind went completely blank. He didn't know what he was feeling or how he should react. It was like he had lived for so many years because of Gunyenji. Now that she was going to take it away, not only would he have nothing left, but he would also have nothing to live for. Hijichu stood there ramrod straight. Even his back exuded an endless sense of loneliness and desolation. Gunyenji couldn't bear it, but she also knew that it was better to make things clear as soon as possible. She really didn't want to lose a mentor and helpful friend like Hijichu. To her, Hijichu was truly like family. But perhaps she, Gunyenji, would never have a family in this lifetime. Gunyenji slowly walked over and stood a meter behind Hijichu. Hijichu turned around and looked at her coldly. The expression on his face made Gunyenji feel extremely guilty. She gathered her courage and said, Professor I wanted to tell you that I did break up with Hua Xiaoheng before, but later he signed a marriage certificate with me. Hijichu had been mentally prepared. He knew that he was late by the most crucial 6 years. It wouldn't be easy to catch up to Hua Xiaoheng. But he never thought that Gunyenji would say that she was already married to Hua Xiaoheng. Yenji, you can't joke about this. Hijichu's expression changed as he took a step forward. Married? Do you think this is child's play? Gunyenji recalled the day she was forced to sign the marriage certificate and also felt very wronged. I know this isn't child's play, but what about the wedding? Hua Xiaoheng married you without a word and didn't even have a wedding? Are you sure he didn't mean to play with you? Hijichu was so cold he was about to kill someone. Yenji, did he force you? Faced with Hijichu's interrogation, Gunyenji looked up and begged, Professor don't be angry. I'll tell you everything. Don't be angry, okay? I didn't tell anyone about this because I didn't admit it. But whether I admit it or not, I really signed a marriage certificate with him and what? Hijichu grabbed Gunyenji's arm, his expression extremely pained. Tell me, who is the person you like? As long as you tell me that you really like him, Hijichu said the word I 3 times in a row. His heart was in so much pain that it felt like someone had taken a knife and cut off one of his ribs. The wound was a bloody mess, and there was a huge hole in his heart that he would never recover from for the rest of his life. Professor I've never stopped loving him. Gunyenji bared her heart to Hijichu. But I used to think that the difference in status between us was too great and we couldn't really be together. So I broke up with him and wanted to leave him. But he didn't give up on me. I know everything he did for me and he's also changing for me. I don't have too many expectations. I just want to work hard to become someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with him. That way there would be fewer people hindering them, and they could live happily without worrying day and night about someone trying to break them up. Hijichu took 2 steps back and used all the strength in his body to stabilize himself. He understood what Gunyenji meant. But even so, he couldn't say the words to leave her. Because leaving her would be worse than giving up on her. This was the first update. Today was the 3rd update and the monthly votes were going to be added. Let me remind you about recommendation votes and monthly votes. The first update should be at 1 p.m. and the monthly votes would be added at 3,900 and 4,200. The 3rd update would be at 7 p.m. Chapter 996. Hijichu reached out and slowly caressed Gunyenji's head. He held his breath and asked in a trembling voice, Do you really love him? Are you sure? Someone can treat you better. Do you really want to give up on other options? Professor I thought of other options, but once he appeared I had no other choice. Gunyenji took Hijichu's hand off her head. Professor I really respect you. Although I don't remember our past relationship, I have a very familiar feeling about you, and this feeling is getting stronger and stronger, so I don't want to avoid you. But if seeing me again makes you feel uncomfortable, I can never see you again. Hijichu closed his eyes. It wasn't like he hadn't expected this outcome. He could only say that it was still a little better than the worst possible outcome. Are you stupid? Why would I feel uncomfortable when I see you? Hijichu took a deep breath and pulled Gunyenji into his arms. He choked out, Just treat me as your family. Don't avoid me. He hugged Gunyenji tightly and tried his best to hold back the tears that were about to burst out. Gunyenji struggled a little uncomfortably. Yenji, let me hug you for a while. Just treat me as your older brother. You always called me Brother when you were young. Hijichu murmured. His usual cool voice sounded very depressed. Gunyenji was also very emotional when she heard the words, Brother Professor did I really call you Brother when I was young? Did you know my parents? Hijichu didn't say anything. He just held Gunyenji in his arms, his expression a mixture of sadness and joy. It was like a priceless treasure that he had painstakingly found was suddenly going to be given to someone else. Hijichu was extremely unwilling, but he couldn't resist Gunyenji's words. Once he appeared, I had no other choice. Gunyenji didn't struggle anymore and didn't continue asking. Although she was a little disappointed, she could also feel that Hijichu's hug was so careful, gentle, and tolerant. It was like no matter what she did or said, he wouldn't say no. She didn't know how long it took. Maybe 20 minutes? Or maybe half an hour. Gunyenji's legs were sore from standing, so she quietly said to Hijichu, "Professor He, please don't tell anyone else that Huashao and I are already married, okay? Actually, I don't recognize this marriage." In Gunyenji's heart, loving him was one thing but getting married was another. She would never agree to such a marriage. As expected, Hijichu also sneered. "Of course not. You want to marry my little Nyenji so easily? How can there be such a good thing in the world?" Gunyenji calmed down and was about to push Hijichu away when she heard the sound of someone opening the door. Other than her, only Huashaoheng had the key to her house. Gunyenji's heart tightened and she couldn't help feeling a headache coming on. Hijichu seemed to understand something. He quickly let go of her and rushed out of the bedroom like the wind. When she arrived at the living room, she saw Huashaoheng opening the door. "Huashaoheng, you despicable man. How dare he cheat the marriage? Do you really think Nyenji can do whatever she wants without anyone protecting her?" Hijichu didn't say anything and threw a punch at Huashaoheng's face. Huashaoheng knew Hijichu was still there. Hijichu threw a punch at him, and Huashaoheng instinctively tilted his head to the side to avoid Hijichu's fist. At the same time he raised his arm to block. Gunyenji suddenly remembered that Huashaoheng's right arm was injured. Although it had been half a month, she didn't know if it had recovered. "Professor He, Huashao's right arm is injured you." Gunyenji didn't even finish her sentence when she saw Hijichu attack Huashaoheng's right arm even more ruthlessly. His punches and kicks were like the wind and he even used a roundhouse kick. His long legs greeted Huashaoheng's right arm without hesitation. Gunyenji couldn't bear to see it, so she covered her face and squatted down in the corner. Huashaoheng and Hijichu started fighting in her living room. She didn't know if they were good at showing off their skills, or if they were careful not to mess up Gunyenji's living room. In short, they fought for 4 to 5 minutes and Gunyenji's living room was still as clean and tidy as before. The two of them moved around in the empty space in the living room and in between the furniture. In the end, Huashaoheng felt guilty and slowed down his strength. The two of them were almost evenly matched before the winner was decided. Hijichu's fist landed squarely on Huashaoheng's back. Huashaoheng staggered from the hit and crawled in front of Gunyenji, who was squatting in the corner. He didn't make a sound and allowed Hijichu to kick him a few times. "Don't play dumb." Hijichu stopped and walked over to look at Huashaoheng coldly. "You wanted to step on Huashaoheng. Don't you have any shame? With your status, do you need to force Nyenji to marry you like this? Do you really think you're so great just because you're a major general and treat her like a toy?" Huashaoheng looked up at Gunyenji. "You told him everything?" Gunyenji still covered her face, but she nodded almost imperceptibly. "I won't admit it. Nyenji won't admit it either. Stop dreaming." Hijichu couldn't help but kick Huashaoheng again. "Get up and fight again. Don't think you can get sympathy by playing dead." Huashaoheng rolled over to avoid Hijichu's fierce kick. He half knelt in front of Gunyenji and turned to look at Hijichu. He said coldly, "Hijichu, I'm giving you face. Don't push your luck." "Push my luck?" Hijichu was furious. "You used your status to force a helpless orphan girl to marry you. You didn't propose or have a wedding. How dare you talk to me about face? Did you ask for my permission to marry her? Why should I ask for your permission? Who are you to her?" Huashaoheng stood up and grabbed Gunyenji's arm at the same time to pull her up from the corner. Hijichu's Adam's apple bobbed. He clenched his fists and said hoarsely, "She just acknowledged me as her brother. I'm her only family in this world. Do you need my permission?" "Brother?" Huashaoheng narrowed his eyes. "You're related by blood?" Hijichu's expression darkened. "You're the one related by blood to Nyenji." Huashaoheng was speechless. Gunyenji was speechless. Putting down her hand that was covering her face, Gunyenji said with a headache, "What's wrong with you guys? You make it sound like it's bad to be related by blood to me. I've been dreaming of finding my family." Huashaoheng and Hijichu looked at her together. Huashaoheng pulled her to his side and pointed at Hijichu. "Are you sure you acknowledged him as your brother just now? Why would you acknowledge him as your sister if you're not related by blood?" Gunyenji was also a little embarrassed. Although she relied on and respected Hijichu like a family member, she still felt quite embarrassed when Hijichu directly said that she had just acknowledged him as her brother. Hijichu hid the pain in his eyes and sneered. Do you think I want to acknowledge you as my sister? I do want to acknowledge our fiancé relationship, but do you admit it? What? No. Hua Xiaoheng and Gun Yanji spoke at the same time. Hijichu looked at Gun Yanji, then at Hua Xiaoheng. He said coldly, yes, that's right. Yanji was my fiancé from the moment she was born. If you have a problem with it, go talk to her parents. Don't ask me. Do you know where her parents are? Hua Xiaoheng pressed the advantage and wanted to pry more information from Hijichu. Hijichu didn't fall for it at all. You, Major General Hua, haven't found them for so many years. How could I possibly find them? Besides, if I could find them, would I be waiting for you to pick the fruits of my labor? Yanji was married to me a long time ago. This sentence was not without reason. With Hijichu's obsession with Gun Yanji, if he could find Gun Yanji's parents to prove their engagement, he would probably have done it 800 years ago. Hua Xiaoheng's eyes darkened. He said calmly, okay, since we've talked it out today, I'll congratulate Yanji first. She has a brother who loves her dearly. Hijichu glanced at him and crossed his arms. You admit that I'm her brother? That's fine, but if you want to marry her, you have to get my permission first. Yanji, do you agree or not? In Gun Yanji's heart, she had always felt that Hijichu was easier to talk to than Hua Xiaoheng, so she nodded obediently. Professor He. I won't be at a disadvantage with Brother He watching over me. Did you hear that? Hijichu pulled Gun Yanji over again and said to Hua Xiaoheng, then remember, you're only Yanji's pursuer now. Before you meet my requirements, you're not allowed to cheat or deceive Yanji. Hua Xiaoheng rubbed his temples. Then Professor He shouldn't stay overnight at Yanji's house so easily. Even if you were her biological brother or father, you should still remember that a grown man avoids his mother, and a grown woman avoids her father, not to mention that you're not related to her by blood. Gun Yanji felt her head swell into two. She was so sleepy that she just wanted to get rid of the two of them so that she could have a good sleep. She was going to intern at the Senate tomorrow, so she couldn't be late. Gun Yanji raised her hands in surrender. Okay. You're both right. Now get out. I'm going to bed. I have to go to work in the Senate tomorrow. I really don't have the energy to deal with the two gods today. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at her and recalled that Gun Yanji had told him on the phone that she had thought of a way to prevent Kai Songyin from suing. Could it be related to the Senate? He wanted to ask, but when he looked at the time, it was already past 1 in the morning, so he didn't say anything. Go to sleep, I'm leaving. He looked at Hijichu. Professor He, let's go out together? I still have some questions to ask Professor He. Hijichu was mentally and physically exhausted. He really didn't have the energy to deal with the sly Hua Xiaoheng's interrogation. He picked up his coat from the sofa and said coldly, I'm also very tired. If Hua Xiao has anything to say, we can talk about it later. Gun Yanji stood in the living room and watched as the two men left one after the other. She then walked over to close the door tightly and locked it. After returning to the bedroom, she threw herself on the bed and almost immediately fell asleep. It was like a huge problem had finally been solved, and the weight in her heart was completely lifted. Gun Yanji slept soundly. A dreamless night. She woke up on time at 7 the next morning. She was in a hurry to report to the Senate. After washing up in a hurry, she changed into her professional attire. She put on Burberry's horn-button coat and Burberry's classic mutton checkered scarf. Carrying her Hermes Berlin bag, she left the house in Hipingli. Both the Senate and the Senate were in the core area of the second ring road. Gun Yanji arrived at the entrance of the Senate and said to the guard, I'm Gun Yanji. Speaker Long asked me to be an intern. Please wait a moment. The guard contacted the inside and checked the visitor list for today. After a while, the guard said to her, I'm sorry, Miss Gu. We didn't find your name on the list. Did we make a mistake? I don't think so. Gun Yanji quickly took out her phone and called Special Assistant Yang first. She remembered that Speaker Long had asked Special Assistant Yang to help her with the procedures. However, Special Assistant Yang's phone couldn't be reached. It was either busy or unreachable. Gun Yanji knew that the Senate would be very busy these few days, so she didn't think about going anywhere else. Plus, she had called nearly 10 times before finding Speaker Long yesterday, so she didn't care and just kept calling. She called for 20 minutes at the door before finally getting through to Special Assistant Yang's cell phone. As soon as he heard Gun Yanji's voice, he quickly said, Miss Gu, aren't you going to be an intern for Speaker Long? Why aren't you here yet? I'm here. I've been calling your cell phone at the door for almost 20 minutes. The guard said my name isn't on the list and won't let me in. Special Assistant Yang said apologetically, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was busy all night yesterday and forgot to send your and Rong Mingxing's names. Wait for me, I'll come pick you up now." This is the second major chapter, which includes the monthly votes of 3,900 and 4,200 plus chapters. A reminder about the recommendation votes and monthly votes. The third chapter, which is also the major chapter, includes the monthly votes of 4,200 plus chapters. Chapter 997. This time, Gunyanji only had to wait for 5 minutes before Special Assistant Yang rushed out of the Senate's tall doors. His suit was wrinkled and the dark stubble on his jaw was very obvious. It looked like he had stayed up all night. Gunyanji smiled. "It seems like Special Assistant Yang and you are really busy." "We are indeed very busy. It would be great if you could come and help." Special Assistant Yang smiled as he led her in. "There is another intern today. She is also an alumnus of RB University. She is a fourth-year graduate this year. Her name is Rong Mingxing. She is not here yet." "You are early." Gunyanji nodded. "Oh, since you are so busy, it would be good to have a few more interns." Special Assistant Yang took her to Speaker Long's office and apologized repeatedly. "Senior Speaker Long, I finished all the paperwork yesterday, but when someone came to verify the provisional election ballot, I forgot to send the name list of the 2 interns to the security guard. I didn't sleep last night, so my mind is not very clear." Speaker Long also didn't sleep last night. He waved his hand when he heard this. "It's fine. You're also very busy. Go wash up. I will introduce the basic situation to Nianji, and then you can find something for her to do." Special Assistant Yang froze for a moment, but quickly recovered and smiled. "That's great. Speaker Long is considerate of us. I will leave first. Nianji, come to my office later. I will take you to your seat." He nodded to Gunyanji as he spoke and left with a smile. However, as soon as he left Speaker Long's office, the smile on Special Assistant Yang's face disappeared. He pushed the gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose and walked back to his office expressionlessly. He looked through the tasks that needed to be assigned for the next few days. A subordinate walked in and complained to him, "Special Assistant Yang, someone from the Prime Minister's office came to talk to you about the ballot. Do you want to see them?" Special Assistant Yang looked at his schedule and had no interest in the Prime Minister and his subordinates who were about to step down. He shook his head. "Let them wait." In Speaker Long's office, Gunyanji sat upright across from Speaker Long and listened to him explain the specific situation of the Senate. His speech was neither too fast nor too slow, but it was detailed and appropriate. He quickly briefed her on the entire situation in the Senate and said, "Nianji, you're still an intern right now, so we definitely won't assign you any tasks that require your actual responsibility. However, you have to use this time to think and see more. After you understand the process, I will ask Special Assistant Yang to assign you some tasks that require you to take responsibility. What do you think?" "No problem, I'll follow your arrangements." Gunyanji nodded and left with the folders that Speaker Long had given her. When she arrived at Special Assistant Yang's office, Gunyanji quickly glanced around. This office wasn't small at all. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the imperial city, and the scenery was magnificent and vast. "Nianji, sit." Special Assistant Yang had already washed his face and shaved, so he looked energetic again. He passed the mission list to Gunyanji. "Take a look and see what you want to do." Gunyanji glanced at it briefly. Most of it was typing, photocopying, pouring coffee, and organizing notes. "Special Assistant Yang, are you sure this is something an intern should do?" Gunyanji pushed the mission list back to Special Assistant Yang and said with a smile, "It looks like it's done by a temporary worker." "Miss Gu." Special Assistant Yang changed the way he addressed her and became serious. "Interns who come here will indeed only do these things for the first few days. Of course, Miss Gu is very capable, so it's a waste of your talent to do these things." Gunyanji smiled. "I don't think it's a waste of my talent. It's just that when I came here, I told Speaker Long that I heard you guys were busy, so I wanted to help. Unfortunately, you only asked me to do these things. It seems like you guys aren't that busy. Special Assistant Yang even made me wait 20 minutes this morning. This is really a great show of strength." Special Assistant Yang pushed his glasses up and said with a smile, "Miss Gu, I think you have misunderstood. This is really something an intern should do. Rong Mingxing, who I mentioned to you earlier, is already here. She's already gone to pour coffee." Gunyanji smiled and stood up slowly. "If that's the case, then I'll go bring coffee to Speaker Long." She turned to leave. Special Assistant Yang saw that she was about to walk to the door and stopped her. Miss Gu, since you don't like this kind of work, it's okay. I still have some things here. I wonder if Miss Gu would be willing to try them out? Gu Nianji turned around and said calmly, Special Assistant Yang, I'm even willing to pour coffee. What else would I be unwilling to try? Miss Gu's work attitude is very good. Our Senate needs talents like you. Special Assistant Yang said as he took out another file. This is the information from the office of the Prime Minister. Their people came early this morning to discuss the matter of the provisional election. Why don't you help us meet them? We just need to ask them what their opinion is. This task was of course much more interesting than pouring coffee. Gu Nianji accepted it without hesitation. Special Assistant Yang found someone to take her to her seat. Gu Nianji was now considered Speaker Long's intern, so she was also considered a member of the Senate Secretariat. Special Assistant Yang asked someone to take her to the Secretariat of the Senate. After Gu Nianji arrived, she greeted everyone one by one and occasionally chatted with them. By the time she sat down, she recognized almost all the names and positions of the people in the circle. Everyone joked around for a bit before Gu Nianji opened the file from the office of the Prime Minister and began reading it. When she saw that Tan Guirin was among the people who came today, Gu Nianji raised her brows and asked the colleague next to her, Can the Prime Minister's daughter also be considered a representative of the office of the Prime Minister? How is that possible? The person pouted in disdain. I don't even know what she's here for. The current Prime Minister's family of 3 had already changed from the immortal couple that everyone envied to a model family that played their own games. Sometimes they could even play together. Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang's only daughter, Tan Guirin, was the most innocent victim. Gu Nianji looked at the file again before standing up and going to the guest room to meet the people from the office of the Prime Minister. However, before going to the guest room, Gu Nianji first asked someone to ask Tan Guirin to leave. She didn't know why Tan Guirin would come at this time, but she would definitely come. However, since Tan Guirin wasn't an official representative of the office of the Prime Minister, Gu Nianji didn't need to be polite to her. After Tan Guirin was asked to leave, Gu Nianji finally went to meet the 3 officials from the office of the Prime Minister. What do you want? Gu Nianji smiled calmly and appeared to be very easy to talk to. Miss Gu, it's like this. We received news that the election will be restarting soon, but we feel that this matter still needs to be considered at length. Yes. Consider at length. The people are ignorant and treat the victims as the perpetrators. Are you also ignorant? I thought you were a group of truly high-quality people. This was the 3rd update, including the monthly votes of 4,200 plus updates. Remind me about recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 998. Although Gu Nianji was a newcomer interning in the Senate on her first day, she didn't have the usual restraint and submissive attitude that newcomers usually had. Special Assistant Yang had purposely asked Gu Nianji to meet the 3 officials from the office of the Prime Minister because he wanted her to experience the difficulty of working there. How could he possibly throw such an important task to an intern on her first day? So with Gu Nianji, there were a few senior secretaries from the Senate Secretariat who were more senior and good at smoothing things over. However, they knew a little about Special Assistant Yang's intentions. He wouldn't go so far as to actively make things difficult for Gu Nianji, but he couldn't avoid watching from the sidelines. That was how it was in the workplace. The higher one got, the more one had to act rather than act. People without foresight couldn't climb to the top. Therefore, when they saw the 3 people from the office of the Prime Minister surrounding Gu Nianji and refusing to let her go, the senior secretaries looked at each other meaningfully and actually stood behind Gu Nianji without saying a word as if they were her attendants. Gu Nianji was someone who had interned in the US Senate, so the intrigue there was only worse than here. Also, she had a law background and was an excellent trial lawyer. This meant that her observation skills were sharper than others, and her ability to adapt to changing situations was also stronger than the average person's. So she didn't care at all about what the senior secretaries behind her were thinking. She only smiled at the 3 officials from the office of the Prime Minister who kept making unreasonable requests around her. Please don't get agitated and speak one by one. Come, first report your name, agency, official position or civil servant rank. Gu Nianji smiled and adopted a businesslike posture. She held a pen in her hand and spoke with the 3 people in an official manner. She had heard Hua Xiaoheng say such perfunctory things to others before, and now that she was learning it herself, she actually did it well. Not only did the senior secretaries behind her freeze, but even the 3 officials from the office of the Prime Minister were stunned. The three of them looked at each other, then asked Gunyenji guiltily, "May I ask what you want us to do? We are officials from the office of the Prime Minister. You don't know us, so you're dealing with us? May I ask who you are? And what rank are you?" Very well, Gunyenji knew she had successfully diverted the three people's topic. She immediately spread her hands and said, "This is the procedure of the Senate to deal with problems. Since you are officials of the Prime Minister's residence, surely you understand the importance of procedure better than I do? Come, don't be anxious. Tell me your grievances one by one. Once you've made it clear, sign here." The three officials from the office of the Prime Minister were all people from the office of the Prime Minister, or the office of the Prime Minister. Their purpose in coming to the Senate was to exert pressure on the Senate and obstruct the Senate's efforts to restart the general election. It would be best if the Senate was full of loopholes so that they could launch a follow-up attack. Even if he did not succeed, it did not matter because his main goal was to create chaos. Of course, the more he pestered them endlessly, the angrier they would be. It would be best if they got into a big argument or even a fight with them. Anyway, a certain Japanese parliament on the Blue Planet was famous for fighting, so they could follow suit. They had even brought the Prime Minister's dainty daughter, Tangurin, in order to seek some sort of conflict. It would be best if they could accidentally injure Miss Tan. Then it would be big news. At that time, even if the general election was to be restarted, the impression of the Prime Minister, who had always used his daughter to gain sympathy, would definitely be restored. However, they hadn't expected that this familiar-looking female staff member would ask someone to escort Tangurin out of the Senate building as soon as she arrived. This caused them to be a little flustered, so they had no choice but to personally confront this young lady. But now this female staff wanted them to register and sign. Did she think they were stupid? The three people from the office of the Prime Minister looked at Gunyenji suspiciously. "Who the hell are you? Isn't it always Special Assistant Yang who handles this kind of problem?" Gunyenji saw through their intentions and refused to fall for it. She smiled good-naturedly and said, "This is the Senate, not Special Assistant Yang's house. If there's a problem, Special Assistant Yang is the only one who can deal with it. Are you stupid?" Sure enough, they thought they were stupid. The three people from the office of the Prime Minister's office were furious. They slammed the table and shouted, "Who are you? You just chased our young miss out. Are you looking down on us? I'm telling you, our Prime Minister hasn't stepped down yet. I won't tolerate your impudence." Impudent? How am I being presumptuous? As officials of the office of the Prime Minister, you don't care about your own image and the office of the Prime Minister's image. You're causing trouble here and you think you're in the right? Wasn't it just a fight? She was familiar with this job. Aren't you going to be impudent? We demand that you annul the vote to restart the cabinet, because it is not legal at all. But you've been pretending to be deaf and dumb, and even said that we're pestering endlessly. The three people from the Public Relations Office of the Prime Minister's residence were very glib with their mouths. Regardless of whether what they said made sense or not, they were able to spout a bunch of nonsense. In a fight, sometimes, it really depended on who had the loudest voice, who had the advantage in numbers, and who was in the right. The three people from the Prime Minister's residence could tell that even though this was the Parliament's home ground, none of them could fight. The only person who spoke to them was a seemingly inexperienced female staff member. None of the secretaries in suits and leather shoes behind her spoke. Very good, very much in line with the style of Speaker Long's Secretariat and Special Affairs Office. Therefore, the three people from the office of the Prime Minister's office were even more fearless. In order to be able to make big news, they were also going all out. Just to provoke the people of the Senate, it would be best to fight them. These people had already brought their pinhole cameras. Once the fight began, the news would be broadcasted live, and the entire nation would know who was in the right. Seeing the eager expressions on these people's faces, as well as the high-ranking secretaries behind Gunyenji who looked as if it had nothing to do with them, Gunyenji would have wasted her time working for Hijichu and Hua Xiaoheng if she didn't know what they were planning. Her mind raced and her words became more and more incisive. "Three spokespersons, may I ask why our vote is not legal? Is it because the number of people who voted wasn't enough? Or is the voting procedure illegal? Please bring out the legal provisions and court precedents to clarify." What? Your Prime Minister can put on a porn show with a Japanese female spy, but others can't crusade against him? Are you sure your Prime Minister is the Prime Minister and not the Emperor? Even if he's the Emperor, an emperor who colludes with a foreign country and betrays national interests should be punished by everyone. Who are you accusing of colluding with a foreign country and betraying national interests? This is a very serious accusation, don't you know? Say it again and I'll sue you for slander. The three people from the office of the Prime Minister's spokesperson's office immediately changed their expressions and became even more aggressive. Gu Nianji didn't lose her composure. She waved her hand and said, "Go ahead and sue. Go ahead and sue right now. I'll be waiting for your court summons. You're accusing me of slander? Are you a law student? May I ask which sentence of mine is slanderous? I advise you to go back and consult your Prime Minister's wife before making any accusations, lest you go for wool and come home shorn. You're accusing our Prime Minister of betraying national interests. May I ask what evidence do you have?" The people from the office of the Prime Minister's office were unknowingly being led further and further astray by Gu Nianji. Other than stirring up trouble, they had nothing to do with the Senate's vote to dissolve the cabinet. Gu Nianji made two accusations. One was colluding with a foreign country, and the other was betraying national interests. The accusation of colluding with a foreign country was obviously something even the three troublemakers from the office of the Prime Minister's office could not refute. Therefore, they avoided the accusation and only harped on Gu Nianji's accusation that the Prime Minister had betrayed national interests. Gu Nianji shrugged and looked indifferent. She arrogantly pushed the blame away. "Even if I had evidence, why should I tell you? If I told you, you would immediately destroy the evidence? Do you think I'm dumber than you?" The three people from the office of the Prime Minister's office did not expect someone in the Senate to be even better at stirring up trouble than they were. This was completely different from the usual style of Speaker Long's subordinates. Because Speaker Long was the highest leader of the upper and lower houses of the Senate, his Secretariat and Special Affairs Office were also highly respected in the Wuxia Empire due to his lofty status. No one had ever found fault with them, nor did anyone dare to find fault with them. Therefore, the typical characteristic of his subordinates was that they were good at writing, but they would not openly fight because there was no need for it. Naturally, they would not improve if they had never fought before. Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang had only come up with this plan after analyzing the characteristics and abilities of the staff on Speaker Long's side. This was what it meant to know oneself and one's enemy to win 100 battles. And they did not dare to use the same plan on the people in the lower house of parliament. Because the people in the lower house of parliament had all climbed up from the bottom through countless battles, they were all sharp-tongued. If they went to cause trouble with them, they would not gain anything, and it would be easy to be blamed instead. Moreover, after dealing with the upper house of parliament, dealing with the lower house of parliament would be a piece of cake. However, they did not expect that there would be an additional variable in the upper house of parliament, Gu Nianji. "Who exactly are you? How come we didn't know you were on Speaker Long's side? You're not an imposter, are you? Let me tell you, little girl, impersonating a staff member of the Senate is a serious crime." The people from the PR department of the office of the Prime Minister began to scare Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji rolled her eyes and waved her badge in front of these people. "Do you see this? A genuine staff member of the upper house of parliament." Although she was an intern, Speaker Long favored her, so he applied for the same work badge as a formal staff member. One of the people from the PR department of the office of the Prime Minister saw the words, Gu Nianji written on the badge and immediately hid in the side to contact Kai Songyin. When Kai Songyin found out that Gu Nianji had actually gone to work at the Senate, it was truly a combination of old and new hatred, and her eyes instantly turned red. "Show her what you're made of," Kai Songyin ordered fiercely. "She has a bad temper. If you provoke her, it would be best to make it look like she made the first move." When the time came for her lawsuit to go to court, Gu Nianji's reputation would be tarnished. Kai Songyin smiled coldly and hung up the phone. The person from the PR department of the office of the Prime Minister understood the First Lady's intentions and began to blackmail her. He walked over to the table in front of Gu Nianji and picked up the small notebook that Gu Nianji had asked them to sign. He weighed it in his hand and moved his face close to Gu Nianji's. Bashfully he whispered, "Little girl, are you really a staff member of the upper house of parliament? Don't tell me you got in through some dishonest means?" As he spoke, his gaze swept over Gu Nianji's bulging chest with malicious intent. Gu Nianji was wearing a more form-fitting professional attire. It was actually very formal, but when this person looked at it, it seemed like she was wearing something that shouldn't be worn. Gu Nianji frowned. "Sir, please be mindful of your image. This is the upper house of parliament, not the Paramount Ballroom." "So you know about the Paramount Ballroom. You have a bright future." The person from the PR department of the office of the Prime Minister, who was focused on causing trouble, moved his head even closer and whispered in her ear, "Miss Gu, right? Can I buy your time to go to court?" I'm very strong. He was disgusting Gunyenji so that Gunyenji couldn't take it anymore and would slap him in public. Who would have thought that although Gunyenji was disgusted by him, she wouldn't lose her cool? Moreover, this was the Senate building. Did he think it was a small black ballroom outside? The corners of Gunyenji's mouth twitched. She said calmly, "Spokesperson, your every word and action is under surveillance. Your words and actions just now have already violated Article 237 of the criminal law. Forcible indecency is generally punishable by up to 5 years in prison or criminal detention. Whoever gathers a crowd or commits the crime in the preceding paragraph in public, or has other serious circumstances, shall be sentenced to more than 5 years in prison. Since this is the Senate building, it is a public place. Moreover, 3 people form a crowd, so the 3 of you have already constituted a crowd committing this crime in public and can be sentenced to more than 5 years in prison." She spoke methodically and with the legal provisions at her fingertips. There was an inviolable awe-inspiring aura in her casual words. This was the first 3,500-word update to make up for the 4,200-word update for yesterday's monthly votes. A reminder about the recommendation votes and monthly votes. The first update should be at 1 p.m. and the monthly votes should be 4,500 and 4,800 plus updates. The third update at 7 p.m. Chapter 999. The hearts of the 3 people from the office of the Prime Minister's office trembled. Damn it. It was as if they had kicked an iron plate. It was unknown whether the person at the very front was so excited that he couldn't control his strength, or if he was deliberately excited to find fault. He shouted, "Don't threaten me. I've been here so many times, but I've never seen anyone pick a fight like you. Forced indecency? When did I do that to you? Do you think you are a peerless beauty? Don't flatter yourself." As he spoke, he slammed the notebook that Gunyenji had asked him to register in front of Gunyenji. When Gunyenji saw this, she didn't know if it was intentional or not, but she suddenly leaned forward and tilted her head, as if she was talking to the senior secretary behind her. The man couldn't stop himself in time, and his signature book hit Gunyenji's face as she leaned forward. It was as if she had been slapped in the face. Gunyenji's skin was as delicate as jade porcelain, and the slightest bit of force would leave a red mark. The skin on her face was especially delicate, and she was very fair. Half of Gunyenji's face immediately became visibly red and swollen when the man slapped the notebook. Gunyenji snorted and covered her face. She looked up angrily at the person who had hit her and said angrily, "You sure are arrogant." Even before stepping down from the stage, he dared to beat up a staff member of the parliament. "Great. Are you guys trying to make a big scoop? I'll fulfill your wish." She turned around and said to the senior secretaries behind her, "You guys, you won't just watch me get bullied by outsiders like this, right?" Although these senior secretaries had the intention of watching from the sidelines and watching the drama unfold, they wouldn't go so far as to gloat over Gunyenji's misfortune after seeing her being beaten up like this. They knew that if they dared to make a move on Gunyenji, they would also dare to make a move on them. There was actually no difference in rank between the secretaries. The so-called junior secretary and senior secretary were based on seniority, not administrative levels. The faces of these few people also changed. They were all old foxes of the council, so they naturally knew how to blow the matter up. Besides, these people from the Prime Minister's residence had been living in the Senate for the past 2 days and had obstructed many of their matters. It just so happened that they had a special pass from the Prime Minister's residence. Under normal circumstances, the Parliament's police and guards couldn't even chase them out. Now that they had made a move, they couldn't blame them for being impolite. One of them quickly pressed a button, and the sirens in the Parliament building started blaring. Hearing that there was a situation here, the security personnel of the Parliament building quickly ran over. They held their batons and asked loudly, "What's going on? What's going on?" 3 spokespersons from the Prime Minister's residence came to our Parliament to behave atrociously and hit our female staff member. A senior secretary pointed at the 3 red-faced spokesmen from the office of the Prime Minister and said, "This is the female staff member who was beaten. I've already called an ambulance and she'll be sent to the hospital for an examination." "Are you doing this on purpose? It's just a notepad and you want to check my injury?" One of the spokespeople from the office of the Prime Minister, who had accidentally slapped Gunyenji with a notepad, had a change of expression. "You guys are deliberately framing her." "Yes. We were the ones who framed you to come to the Parliament, framed you for molesting and humiliating me, and finally framed you for slapping me." Gu Nianji immediately began to cry. When she cried, she looked like a pear blossom in the rain. She was lovely and had an indescribable sense of gentleness. She didn't have the imposing manner of valiantly confronting the three troublemakers from the office of the Prime Minister's residence at all. Her long, silky hair was half covered, and only one side of her swollen cheek was exposed. It was a stark contrast to her jade-white skin, and her injuries looked shocking. This scene was captured on surveillance cameras. Hua Xiaoheng, who had brought people over to carry out the task of monitoring the interim general election, could see everything clearly through the car system connected to the central control room. The guards of the parliament building immediately surrounded the three troublemakers from the office of the Prime Minister's residence. Please keep an eye on them. We've already called the police and the ambulance will be here soon. A senior secretary from the Secretariat of the Upper House spoke as he sent a message to Speaker Long and Special Assistant Yang. Special Assistant Yang was the first to rush over. He couldn't help but smile as soon as he received the message. But when he walked out of his office, his face was already solemn and filled with silent anger. When he arrived at where Gu Nianji and the others were, Special Assistant Yang asked solemnly, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" A senior secretary pointed at Gu Nianji and said angrily, "Special Assistant Yang, the people from the office of the Prime Minister's residence actually hit someone. We saw them hit her with our own eyes." Gu Nianji used a tissue to wipe her tears and shrank to the side in silence. She looked like a pitiful child. When the people from the office of the Prime Minister's residence saw Special Assistant Yang arrive, they quickly begged for mercy. "Special Assistant Yang, this is a misunderstanding. It really is a misunderstanding. It was your staff member who forced us to sign it. We wanted to return the signed book to her, but accidentally touched her face. We really didn't want to hit her. You can ask your top secretaries." The senior secretaries looked at each other, but no one said anything. Special Assistant Yang glanced at Gu Nianji and tried to smooth things over. "It seems like it really is a misunderstanding. I recognize these people and they aren't like that. Think about it, they are the spokespeople for the office of the Prime Minister's residence. They have many years of work experience and are the most reasonable. Why would they deliberately hit someone in the upper house of Parliament building? Even if you think about it with your knees, it's impossible. I think it is a misunderstanding. Nianji, you are too careless. Bumps and bruises are inevitable. How could you call the guards over? You are making a big deal out of nothing." When the three people from the office of the Prime Minister's residence heard that there was a chance, they immediately liked Special Assistant Yang more. They were also familiar with each other, and they were currently following orders to cause trouble. They had no intention of openly offending Special Assistant Yang. They all nodded in agreement. Special Assistant Yang is a sensible person. I was wondering how Speaker Long's subordinates could be so unreasonable. She was the one who came up to provoke us and she even said that we hit her. This is outrageous. As a spokesperson, the most important thing was to be eloquent. They had to be able to make the dead come to life, and the living become dead. Even if they were to distort the truth, they had to make it sound like it was the truth. Special Assistant Yang had a gentle expression on his face as he smiled bitterly. "Don't say that. I believe that Miss Gu did not intentionally provoke us. She is a new intern and doesn't know the rules very well. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have sent her to deal with such a complicated issue. For the sake of Speaker Long, please don't hold her accountable." Gu Nianji was very surprised by Special Assistant Yang's way of handling the situation. This was someone slapping your left cheek and you had to offer your right cheek. Oh no, this wasn't someone slapping the left cheek of the Senate, and Special Assistant Yang offering his right cheek. Special Assistant Yang was offering someone else's right cheek. However, Gu Nianji wouldn't take this for nothing, and she definitely wouldn't be the one to offer her face. Also, she clearly knew that the three people from the office of the Prime Minister's residence were obviously there to cause trouble. How did it become her provocation? Also, she had other motives for the office of the Prime Minister. How could she achieve her goals without making a big deal out of it? Gu Nianji's expression darkened as she raised her voice. "Special Assistant Yang, I don't agree with what you said. You can't listen to them. I was the one provoking them. Are they from the Senate or am I? Special Assistant Yang is siding with an outsider?" Special Assistant Yang snickered. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and shook his head. "Nianji, you are so childish. We are all serving the people. Why are we divided into factions? Siding with an outsider? Tiske, I haven't heard such childish words since I graduated from high school." Gu Nianji turned her head away and put on a stubborn expression. She stubbornly said, No, if I don't make things clear today, I won't be an intern anymore. I want to call the police. I was attacked in the Senate building. I want to have my injuries examined. The faces of the three troublemakers from the office of the Prime Minister's residence changed. They nervously said to Special Assistant Yang, "This is the Senate, a place outside the law. Even if we hit them, it would have been a waste of time. Have you never seen a fight in the Senate?" Without waiting for Special Assistant Yang to quote scriptures to smooth things over, Gunyenji had already said, "Even if the Senate is a place outside the law and it would have been a waste of time to hit them, that is only against members of parliament. Which one of you is a member of parliament? Is it you or me? None of us are members of parliament. What right do you have to say that we hit them for nothing? Let me tell you, no one has ever been able to escape unscathed after hitting me." The hearts of the three troublemakers from the office of the Prime Minister's residence tightened. Their expressions were not very pleasant. Of course, they knew that hitting them for nothing referred to immunity for physical conflicts between members of parliament. Therefore, their purpose for coming here was to make them get hit by the members of parliament. Then they could use what Gunyenji had just said to sue the Senate and the members of parliament. It would lower the legitimacy of the Senate's resolution and even overturn the motion of the Senate. Now that Gunyenji had used it to slap their faces in advance, it was too embarrassing. "What do you mean? We already said it was a misunderstanding. What else do you want?" The leader of the three troublemakers became stern and righteous. "Everyone is so busy so we can understand your feelings. Forget it, even if we are in the wrong, we will be responsible for your medical expenses. When the time comes, you can take the hospital bill to the office of the Prime Minister to settle it. Let's go." The leader waved his hand, and the three troublemakers wanted to run. "Stop right there." Gunyenji panicked. "You are fleeing to escape punishment. That's even more serious." She turned around to look at the Senate guards. "Hurry up and arrest them. They hit me, so how can we let them go just like that?" However, the guards only listened to Special Assistant Yang and didn't chase after them. The other senior secretaries had witnessed the three men's arrogance with their own eyes. They had also seen them hit Gunyenji. From their point of view, they couldn't tell whether it was a coincidence or intentional. However, it was certain that they had hit Gunyenji. These people looked at Special Assistant Yang uneasily and said quietly, "Special Assistant Yang, they really did hit someone." Special Assistant Yang didn't expect these old foxes to actually speak up for Gunyenji in just a few hours. He was unhappy but didn't show it on his face. He only sighed and said, "I know how you feel, but the office of the Prime Minister has been having a hard time recently. We can't go overboard. It's not good to drive a dog into a dead end." Gunyenji was so angry that she stomped her foot. "If you don't chase after them, I'll chase after them myself." She yelled, "Catch them. They are fugitives." As she spoke, she chased after them. Special Assistant Yang was dumbfounded. This Gunyenji was too arrogant, wasn't she? There was such a thing. He clearly said he wouldn't pursue it. The three people running in front heard Gunyenji's voice and couldn't help running even faster. When they were about to reach the exit, they suddenly heard a series of orderly and powerful footsteps coming from the opposite side. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like there were many people, but it also sounded like there was only one person. The three people had just run to the exit when they all suddenly stopped with a whoosh. One of them ran too fast and couldn't stop. He almost fell from the inertia. They saw a row of fully armed anti-explosion soldiers wearing bulletproof helmets appear at the exit in an instant. They all aimed their guns at the corridor exit, especially at the troublemaking trio from the office of the Prime Minister's PR department. "Stop." The first soldier yelled sternly. "Put your hands on your head and squat down. Whoever stands up will be shot on the spot." The troublemaking trio from the office of the Prime Minister's PR department immediately put their hands on their heads and squatted down. They didn't even dare to make a sound. A man wearing black military boots walked over unhurriedly from behind the soldiers. He wore sunglasses and a low-brimmed military cap pressed down between his eyebrows. He was tall and imposing, and his aura was intimidating. He was a head taller than the burly soldiers. It was Hua Xiaoheng. Gunyenji ran over panting and didn't see Hua Xiaoheng at all. She only saw a row of soldiers at the corridor exit pointing their guns at the troublemaking trio squatting on the ground with their hands on their heads. She immediately pointed at them and said, "They're causing trouble here. They want to run after hitting me. I'm calling the police. You can't let them go." Hua Xiaoheng stood there with his hands behind his back. He quickly glanced at Gunyenji through his sunglasses and saw the unusual swelling on her small face. He pursed his lips and asked calmly, "Who hit you?" Gu Nianji finally saw Hua Xiaoheng, and her eyes reddened with grief. She had cried earlier to put on an act, but now she was crying for real. But in public she didn't throw herself at him, and Hua Xiaoheng couldn't walk over to comfort her. Their gazes met in the air for a moment, and then they looked away. Hua Xiaoheng took 2 steps forward, took off his sunglasses and glanced at Gu Nianji again. After taking off his sunglasses, he saw that the bruises were even more shocking. Hua Xiaoheng looked at the 3 people squatting on the ground. Who hit you? I won't ask a third time. The 3 troublemakers from the PR department of the office of the Prime Minister couldn't stand Hua Xiaoheng's cold and intimidating tone and finally pushed the person out. The 2 of them pointed at the person at the same time. It's him. Hua Xiaoheng put on his sunglasses, clasped his hands behind his back, and looked straight ahead. He said calmly, assaulting a female staff member in the Senate building with the intention of escaping, and resisting a Secret Service member carrying out a special mission. These 3 crimes will be punished simultaneously. Hand him over to the police station and keep an eye on him. Roger, Chief. A soldier walked over and grabbed the person who hit Gu Nianji and pushed him outside. Hua Xiaoheng looked at Special Assistant Yang, who had run over, as well as some staff members of the Senate, and said calmly, General Ji sent me to maintain order during the interim election. I really didn't think that the Senate would be the first place I would have to maintain order. Special Assistant Yang's expression was very strange. How can you maintain order in the country? Major General Hua, aren't you overstepping your authority? Hua Xiaoheng reached out and shook out the orders signed by General Ji and Speaker Long. Special Assistant Yang, do you want to check the handwriting and fingerprints? This was the 2nd chapter of 4,000 words, and the monthly votes of 4,500 and 4,800 plus chapters had been delivered. A reminder about the recommendation votes and monthly votes. The 3rd chapter at 7 p.m. Chapter 1000. Special Assistant Yang took the order signed by General Ji and Speaker Long from Hua Xiaoheng's hands and read it carefully. It was indeed Speaker Long's personal signature, seal, and even fingerprints. There was no way to fake it. Special Assistant Yang pursed his lips and returned the order to Hua Xiaoheng. Major General Hua, do you have any other orders? I just want to know why there was such violence in the Senate. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at Gu Nianji. Do you know who those people were? Is the threshold for the Senate so low? What kind of mediocre person can join in? Major General Hua, they were spokespeople from the office of the Prime Minister. Special Assistant Yang felt inexplicably nervous. He adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and said, Actually, what happened today was really a misunderstanding. Major General Hua, this order says that you are maintaining order for the interim election. It doesn't include the Senate building, right? Hua Xiaoheng glanced at him. What does the interim election have to do with the Senate building? Special Assistant Yang was stunned and instinctively repeated, What does the interim election have to do with the Senate building? Special Assistant Yang, our chief is asking you a question. Do you know how to answer? Hua Xiaoheng's head orderly Fan Jian couldn't stand it anymore. Special Assistant Yang would have died a long time ago if he was in the army if he dilly-dallied like this. How could he be a special assistant here? Special Assistant Yang blushed but didn't stoop to the level of a soldier. He adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses again and forced himself to be calm. The Senate will host the interim election. The Senate building will be the headquarters for the interim election. It's already the headquarters for the interim election. You're telling everyone that maintaining order for the interim election doesn't include the Senate building? Gu Nianji covered her face. Special Assistant Yang, why don't you ask Speaker Long what's going on? Major General Hua and the others are following orders. Are you going to stop them? Special Assistant Yang pursed his lips and said quietly, Gu Nianji, I know you have a close relationship with Major General Hua. Stop. The last thing Gu Nianji wanted to hear was people viewing her hard work as a bonus for Hua Xiaoheng. Special Assistant Yang, this is the Senate, not a place for gossip. You have to look at the almanac if you want to spread rumors. Today isn't a good day for rumors or you'll be arrested. Hua Xiaoheng finally understood how Gu Nianji felt and understood why she was against marrying him. Although he didn't mind being Gu Nianji's backer, Special Assistant Yang's words didn't sound right. Hua Xiaoheng raised his chin slightly and said nonchalantly, Special Assistant Yang, you said that Gu Nianji had a close relationship with me, but in the end she was beaten up to this state in your Senate building, right under your nose. If she had nothing to do with me, would she have been beaten to death by now? Moreover, Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji's relationship wasn't a secret. The upper echelons of the empire all knew that Hua Xiaoheng was Gun Yanji's guardian. Gun Yanji had grown up with Hua Xiaoheng since she was 12 years old, and they had even dated. However, they had broken up a few months ago. Executive Assistant Yang was stunned. He smiled awkwardly and said, "How can that be? Major General Hua must be joking." "Joking? I never joke when I'm on a mission." Hua Xiaoheng's expression darkened. Special Assistant Yang, Miss Gu was personally invited by Speaker Long to be an intern in the Senate. "Didn't Speaker Long tell you?" Special Assistant Yang was about to retort, but he suddenly realized that no matter how he answered, it would be a trap. If he said that Speaker Long had told him, then his treatment of Gun Yanji would be overtly complying but covertly opposing and intentionally making things difficult for her. If he said that Speaker Long hadn't told him, then it would be even more outrageous. It would mean that Speaker Long no longer trusted him. How would he be able to face his colleagues then? So whether he said that he had or not, he had fallen into Hua Xiaoheng's trap. How come he never knew that this taciturn Major General Hua, who was said to be better at fighting than he was at thinking, could actually choke someone to death with just one sentence? Executive Assistant Yang closed his eyes with an uncomfortable look on his face. Gun Yanji hissed beside him. Her face was burning and painful. Speaker Long rushed over at that moment. As soon as he saw Hua Xiaoheng, he quickly said, "Xiaoheng, you're here. I just received a call from General Ji. You're finally here." Speaker Long had asked General Ji for help because the office of the Prime Minister had been sending people to harass them for the past 2 days. He was worried that the members of the Senate would be impulsive and fall into the trap of the office of the Prime Minister. If there really was a big news story of the Senate and the office of the Prime Minister fighting, their interim election would inevitably become a laughingstock and a child's play. So he decided to leave the professional matters to the professionals. Didn't the office of the Prime Minister want to cause trouble and make big news? He found them the best natural enemy to deal with these unreasonable cultured people. As the saying goes, when a scholar meets a soldier, he can't reason with them. He would also let them have a taste of what it was like to suffer in silence. General Ji didn't hesitate and directly asked Hua Xiaoheng to bring people to the Senate to deploy troops to maintain order. Of course, regular soldiers on duty were more powerful than police officers and security guards. Those lawless people dared to go against the city management, dared to attack police officers and beat up security guards, but no one dared to go against the army. Even if they had a death wish, they wouldn't cause trouble for the army. Hua Xiaoheng shook hands with Speaker Long and looked in Gun Yanji's direction with a relaxed expression. Speaker Long is still far-sighted. Those people really can't be dealt with by ordinary people. But we were still a step too late. Some of your subordinates have already been beaten by them. Speaker Long was furious. Who? Who dares to beat up my people? He turned around and looked around. Finally, his eyes stopped on Gun Yanji's face, which was covered by her long hair. Yanji? Your face. Was it beaten? The right side of her face was swollen like a small bun. It was red and looked a bit scary. Gun Yanji nodded and said pitifully, Speaker Long, I didn't know that working in the Senate included being beaten and scolded. I think you think too highly of me. I can't take this kind of filthy air. What do you mean by being beaten and scolded? Yanji, don't worry. You were beaten and I will definitely seek justice for you. What a joke. You beat up my people and want to get away with it? I'll write the word, dragon, upside down. Speaker Long looked at Hua Xiaoheng angrily. Major General Hua, who beat up Yanji just now. Did you see it? I didn't see who did it with my own eyes, but someone accused me of it. Hua Xiaoheng looked at the two people squatting on the ground and said slowly, there were originally 3 of them. I've already sent the one who beat up Yanji to the police station. The remaining 2 are suspected of causing trouble and disrupting the order of the interim election. According to the regulations, they must be punished severely and quickly. Speaker Long, what do you think? It was the 3rd watch. It was the end of the month, so a reminder about the monthly votes. And recommendation votes. P.S. Thank you to Space Lazy Pig, Momo Moshi, Amy Love, Heaven's Little Beggar, Zhou Yuan, and Ring of 8 Precepts for giving the Major General a big red packet of monthly votes in July. Chapter 1001. Although Hua Xiaoheng sounded like he was negotiating, the content of his words left no room for negotiation. He had already drawn out how to punish them, severely and quickly. Of course, Speaker Long agreed immediately. No problem. Special times call for special treatment. Who told them to run into the muzzle of the gun? Gun Yanji covered her face and listened for a while. She thought that severely and quickly wasn't enough. They had to make a big deal out of it. Otherwise, who knew what kind of tricks Kai Song-in, the media mogul from the office of the Prime Minister, who was proficient in manipulating the minds of voters, she muttered softly, these three people are too shameless. They just had to make a big deal out of it. In my opinion, why don't we fulfill their wish and call all the media over? All the news channels should do a wave of rolling broadcasts to let the entire nation know what the office of the Prime Minister is planning. Gunyenji, you just want to see the world in chaos. Special Assistant Yang was the first to shout. He adjusted his expression and put on a losing out is taking advantage look and said earnestly, we've already dealt with the three spokespeople from the office of the Prime Minister. Don't bring more hatred to the Senate and Speaker Long. I'm begging you, little lady. I'll worship you in the future and you'll be my boss, okay? As soon as Special Assistant Yang said this, the expressions on the faces of the senior secretaries around him became subtle. As the saying went, people of the same trade were enemies. In fact, weren't colleagues in the same office also enemies? Especially when the number of promotions was limited, who would still remember love from colleagues, and friendship? It was already rare for him to not hit her when she was down and put the blame on her. Huo Xiaoheng looked down. How could he not hear the hidden scheme in Special Assistant Yang's words? He wasn't an ordinary soldier who was straightforward and straightforward. He was a soldier on a special front and risked his life on such a front. If he didn't know how to observe people and listen to them, he would have been eliminated and reincarnated a long time ago. Huo Xiaoheng pursed his lips and wanted to speak up for Gunyenji, but from the corner of his eye, he saw Gunyenji's right hand gently shaking at him. Huo Xiaoheng didn't say anything else. He nodded slightly in Gunyenji's direction and walked to stand beside Speaker Long. Seeing that Huo Xiaoheng understood what she meant, Gunyenji was in a good mood. She completely ignored Special Assistant Yang's pleas, as if she hadn't heard Special Assistant Yang's hidden intentions. She only focused on Speaker Long. Senior Speaker Long, please listen to me. The fact that the office of the Prime Minister dared to send people to cause trouble at this critical juncture means that they don't have any respect for the Senate at all, let alone you. If making a big deal out of this is attracting hatred, why would the Senate be afraid of a lame Prime Minister who is about to step down? Besides, when the office of the Prime Minister sent those three spokespeople to cause trouble, why didn't they think that they would attract hatred for the office of the Prime Minister? Am I right? Do reasonable people like us have to be afraid of unreasonable people? Gunyenji, what do you mean? Is your goal to make the Senate and the Prime Minister's residence hostile? I really wonder if you're here to help or to deliberately cause trouble. Special Assistant Yang didn't wait for Speaker Long to speak. His expression darkened and he couldn't help but stop her. In Special Assistant Yang's eyes, Gunyenji's behavior just now was simply that of a sly villain trying to sow discord. Her words sounded even more malicious to him. Every single word was like a knife stabbing into his heart. However, Gunyenji continued to ignore him. Every word was directed at Special Assistant Yang's criticism of her. She let go of her hand and showed Speaker Long her swollen face. You see, they beat up your people like this. If you still want to keep the peace and be a good person, then this slap is just the beginning. There will be all kinds of difficulties and disturbances in the future. If you don't pursue the matter, the office of the Prime Minister will know your bottom line. They will know that you don't want to make a big deal out of this and want to keep the peace. What will they do? They will definitely escalate the situation. The three troublemakers 1-0 will immediately be upgraded to the troublemakers X2-0. They will continue to cause trouble until they achieve their goal. Gunyenji, what exactly do you want? How can the people from the office of the Prime Minister's residence be as unbearable as you say? Special Assistant Yang saw that Speaker Long hadn't said anything and began to panic. In front of Speaker Long, he had always maintained the image of gentle, modest, mature, and prudent. He had always tried to minimize big problems and small ones. He would never stir up trouble like Gunyenji and cause trouble for no reason at all. Special Assistant Yang had always thought that Speaker Long admired his style of doing things. It wasn't until Gunyenji and Kai Xingnan appeared and received extraordinary praise from Speaker Long that he vaguely felt that Speaker Long might not be very satisfied with him. Gunyenji raised her eyebrows and finally looked at Special Assistant Yang. She sneered. The people from the office of the Prime Minister's residence aren't as unbearable as I say? Then may I ask, Special Assistant Yang, was the Prime Minister himself the one who personally acted in the sex movie? That's why those three spokespeople just now said obscenities to me and threatened to buy my clock to appear on stage. What do they think the Senate is? What do they think Speaker Long is? Saying they were going to buy my clock to appear on stage was a common saying in the brothel. According to the literal meaning, they were treating the Senate as an unbearably filthy brothel and Speaker Long as a prostitute, although the three people from the office of the Prime Minister's residence had deliberately said such vulgar and disgusting things to provoke Gun Yenji. But Gun Yenji didn't care whether they did it on purpose or not. Anyway, they had said it, and the person thought he had said it so softly that only Gun Yenji could hear it. But what he didn't know was that Gun Yenji had brought a recording pen with her to facilitate work. Because it was her first day at work and she had always been careful and serious, she was afraid of making mistakes. Therefore, she followed Hijichu's teachings and carried a recording pen with her. She planned to record all her work contacts so that she could go back and make up for any mistakes. This was also a lawyer's habit Hijichu had instilled in her. It was convenient for her to contact the client at any time and record all favorable evidence. From the moment she stepped into the hall and saw the three spokespeople from the office of the Prime Minister, Gun Yenji had turned on the recording pen. She didn't expect it to come in handy on her first day. Special Assistant Yang didn't know that Gun Yenji had a recording pen, so he insisted that it was impossible. He shook his head and sighed. Gun Yenji, I don't blame you if you want to add fuel to the fire. After all, you were beaten up, so you have to make up for it. But you have to be a bit unreasonable. Although I'm not very familiar with the three of them, I still know them. They are spokespeople from the office of the Prime Minister and used to be senior public relations managers of major media outlets for many years. How could they say such vulgar things like you? Also, if they really said such things about you, wouldn't you slap them? Then it wouldn't be them beating you but you beating them. That's right. Gun Yenji actually applauded Special Assistant Yang. Special Assistant Yang is right. This is their goal. They wanted to use such vulgar words to provoke me to make a move. If I make a move, do you believe that the news channels will be rolling the headlines of, "The Senate bullies others and fights with the office of the Prime Minister"? Special Assistant Yang was stunned again. His face turned purple and he looked like he was about to have a high blood pressure attack. She actually used his own words to slap him in the face, and in a complimentary tone. This Gun Yenji was too arrogant. She was too cunning. Special Assistant Yang glared at Gun Yenji and bared his teeth. He tried hard to maintain his gentle, modest and mature image and said again, "This is all your speculation. No one knows if it will happen or not. If that's the case, why don't we think of them in the best light? Also, you said they said this. Who else besides you heard it?" As he spoke, Special Assistant Yang turned to ask the senior secretaries who came with Gun Yenji, "Did you hear it?" The senior secretaries all shook their heads. They really hadn't heard it. They only saw the person lean over to Gun Yenji's ear and say something. Then Gun Yenji said that these people had committed indecency. Those people were enraged and someone slammed the memo in front of Gun Yenji. Gun Yenji had just gotten up at that time, and the memo slapped her face. It made a loud smack and it quickly became red and swollen. That was how it looked now. Special Assistant Yang felt that if the other party was crazy enough to say something like that, they would definitely have said it in Gun Yenji's ear. They wouldn't have said it out loud in front of so many people. After all, this was the Senate where there were surveillance cameras everywhere. It wasn't like the market outside. Of course, he didn't know that Gun Yenji had happened to record it with a recording pen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the courage to ask Gun Yenji to keep the peace. So, how can you provoke discord between the Senate and the office of the Prime Minister with just your side of the story? How can you make a fool of yourself in front of the entire nation? Special Assistant Yang finally regained a little confidence and became even more elegant. He hoped that Speaker Long could see that Gun Yenji's biggest weakness was that she didn't see the big picture and couldn't compromise. And working in the Senate, the most important thing was to make all interest groups reach a consensus and reach a compromise. Otherwise, where did Speaker Long's respected position come from? If Gun Yenji couldn't take any losses, it would only cause endless trouble for her future work. Gun Yenji stared at Special Assistant Yang and narrowed her eyes. Special Assistant Yang, this is a joke to the left and a discord to the right. People who don't know better will think that you are the Special Assistant of the Office of the Prime Minister and not the Special Assistant of our Senate. Special Assistant Yang was furious. He didn't care that Speaker Long was also present and said angrily, "Don't slander me. I was teaching you how to behave and do things, but not only did you not appreciate it, but you also made false accusations. You only care about showing off and don't know how to compromise and give in. Where is the team spirit? Where is the big picture?" You're talking about team spirit? You're talking about the big picture? Okay. Gun Yenji took out the recording pen. Before playing the recording, she said seriously, I remember a great man once said, strive for unity through struggle and unity will survive. Strive for unity through compromise and unity will perish. Also, specific situations need specific analysis. We can't use the same rule to cover all situations. Whether we compromise or not, we only have one goal, and that is to achieve our goals. We don't compromise for the sake of compromise, or make meaningless compromises and concessions. Ha, you make it sound better than a song. Special Assistant Yang sneered. I told you not to make a big deal out of it. How is that compromising for the sake of compromise? If we don't make a big deal out of it, the other party will appreciate it? Special Assistant Yang, you are so naive and honest. It's hard to imagine how you survived in the highest palace of politics. Gu Nianji wanted to roll her eyes to the sky. To others, he was all kinds of gentle and honest, but to her, he was all kinds of obstructions. Did he really think she was made of mud? Gu Nianji, don't make personal attacks just because we don't get along. But you are young. Special Assistant Yang was about to show his magnanimity, but Gu Nianji had already waved her hand dismissively, as if she was shooing away mosquitoes and flies. She looked directly at Speaker Long, turned on the play button on the recording pen, and turned the volume to the maximum. Miss Gu, is it? Can I buy your time to enter the stage? I'm very strong. That person's vulgar words coupled with his greasy voice made people want to throw up the food they had the night before. Hua Xiaoheng lowered his eyes, and his expression was calm as usual. One hand was tightly gripping his gun in his pocket, and the veins on the back of his hand were bulging. Speaker Long roared angrily, outrageous. Tan Dongbang. I won't let you have it easy even if you step down. Special Assistant Yang's face instantly turned ashen and he felt terrible. He had never imagined that Gu Nianji would actually have recording evidence. Gu Nianji calmly turned off the recording pen and said again, Speaker Long, please listen to me once. Immediately find the media to expose the vile behavior of the office of the Prime Minister and broadcast it on TV. Let all parties comment. I guarantee that the office of the Prime Minister will be so busy just dealing with the media and the inquiries of the entire nation that they will not dare to use such despicable methods to obstruct the progress of the interim election again. Speaker Long's expression was dark as he nodded. Fine, we will do as you say. I will personally take you to the ambulance. Hua Xiaoheng's heart skipped a beat and he said, I will accompany Speaker Long. As he spoke, he immediately called Yin Shixiang over. Colonel Yin, you are fully in charge here. Yes, Chief. Yin Shixiang saluted loudly and watched Hua Xiaoheng accompany Speaker Long and Gu Nianji to the door. When they arrived at the entrance of the Senate building, the media outside had already gathered. In fact, there was no need for a special notice. Because of the interim election, all major news organizations were stationed at the entrance of the Senate building, waiting to snatch the news. When the police car and ambulance arrived, they began to wait eagerly. Gu Nianji's head was half lowered, and her hair covered most of her face, only revealing the other side of her face that was red and swollen from the beating. Speaker Long and Hua Xiaoheng accompanied her on either side. Speaker Long's face was full of anger, and Hua Xiaoheng had one arm behind Gu Nianji to protect her as they parted the crowd of media and walked forward. Big news. All the media smelled the scent of big news. The Supreme Leader of the Senate, Speaker Long, and the Deputy Secretary General of the Standing Committee of the Military Supreme Council, Major General Hua Xiaoheng, escorted a woman with a swollen face out of the Senate building. There was no need for embellishment. Just this headline alone was enough to make the entire nation go crazy. Not to mention the fact that this woman looked so charming. Aside from half of her face being red and swollen, there wasn't a single part of her that wasn't beautiful. Excuse me, Speaker Long, what exactly happened? The reporter from the national television station habitually handed the microphone to Speaker Long. He originally thought that Speaker Long wouldn't answer his question, but he didn't expect Speaker Long to stop in his tracks and shout angrily at the microphone and camera, Prime Minister Tan, I know that you are reviewing your results in front of the television. You all saw that your plan succeeded. I just want to say one thing. If you are dissatisfied with the Senate's decision, come at me. I'm over 60 years old and I've lived long enough. Don't do anything to our staff. Look at her. She's not even 20 years old yet, and today is her first day of work. Look at how badly she was beaten up by your people. I'm telling you, this isn't over. This was the first 4,300-word update. It included 5,100 monthly votes plus updates. A reminder about recommendation votes and monthly votes. Today was still the third update. At 1 p.m., the monthly votes were 5,400 early updates. At 7 p.m., the third update. Chapter 1002. Just as Gun Yinji expected, the image of Speaker Long angrily reprimanding Prime Minister Tan was broadcasted on all major TV stations. The online media also swarmed in to show footage of the three people from the office of the Prime Minister's office causing trouble in the Senate. Of course, this was all obtained from surveillance footage. With Speaker Long's tacit approval, he sent some screenshots to all major news organizations. The surveillance footage of Gun Yinji being beaten by the other party was carefully selected by Yin Shixiang and sent to the TV stations. In this screenshot, Gun Yinji only showed a blurry side profile, but the strength and momentum of the other party's attack was fully displayed. With a wave of his thick arm, the palm-sized hard notepad whistled through the air and slapped the fair cheek of the woman across from him. Then, her fair face swelled up at a speed almost visible to the naked eye. It had to be said that Yin Shixiang was also someone who wanted to stir up trouble when the world was not in chaos. The screenshot he took was practically a vivid display of the ferocity of the spokesperson from the office of the Prime Minister, as well as the weakness and pitifulness of the new female staff member in the Senate. Yin Shixiang only sent this screenshot of the actual beating to one news organization, the national TV station. Although Kai Songyin had a great reputation and connections in the media, when faced with this kind of news, even Speaker Long, who was always cheerful and never turned hostile, was filled with righteous indignation. All major news outlets chose to focus on reporting this matter and didn't agree to Kai Songyin's urgent PR request. She asked these media outlets to give up on broadcasting this piece of news and promised many benefits in the future. But first, everyone knew that her husband's position as Prime Minister was in danger, so these promises were originally castles in the air. Second, although the Kais outshone the others in the media industry, they didn't reach the point where they could cover the sky with one hand. So when they saw that Tan Dongbang was about to step down and the Kais and Tans were unable to protect themselves, the Kais' former rivals and adversaries all rushed to the media to fight for power. After some fighting, the news of the spokesperson from the office of the Prime Minister beating up a female staff member in the Senate became the hottest news. It was almost as hot as the interim election. At that moment, Gun Yinji had just walked out of the office of the best facial surgeon in the imperial capital with Hua Xiaoheng. Speaker Long didn't go in. Instead, he sat on a bench outside the door and was browsing the news on his phone. When he looked up and saw Gun Yinji and Hua Xiaoheng come out, Speaker Long quickly put away his phone and stood up. Gun Yinji was actually more worried that her injury would heal overnight. It was a good thing that Hua Xiaoheng had mentioned that they had a specialist doctor at the military base during the checkup. After the doctor had done a thorough examination, he prescribed 3 days' worth of medication and sent the medical records to Qinlai. So for the rest of the time, all Qinlai had to do was give her a certificate. Since it was her face that was swollen, Hua Xiaoheng had already prepared a mask that could cover most of her face. She would wear the mask every day for half a month before taking it off. Everyone knew that her face was swollen from the slap, but they didn't have to lift her mask to see her make a fool of herself, right? If there really was such a senseless person, Gun Yinji would definitely make him question his life. Therefore she wasn't worried at all and happily put on the mask. She even complained to Hua Xiaoheng, "Why didn't you find a nicer mask? It's black and white, it makes me look like a panda." Hua Xiaoheng asked, "Aren't pandas nice?" "Pandas are nice but they don't look good on my face," Gun Yinji said honestly. She took out a small makeup mirror and frowned. Hua Xiaoheng patted her shoulder. "Alright, it's only for half a month. Don't make a fuss." Gun Yinji was speechless. Speaker Long saw Gun Yinji put on a large mask and felt sorry for her. "Yinji, I'm so sorry. It's your first day at work and you're already in this state. But I promise you the Senate is very safe. This is an exception. Definitely an exception. No one had ever caused trouble in his territory. This was the first time and it would also be the last." Although Speaker Long was always smiling and looked much more amiable than General Ji, no one could ignore him. If Speaker Long was purely a nice guy, how could he have been the Speaker of the Senate for more than 20 years? He just didn't expect that Gun Yinji, one of his most promising successors, would be the first. Gun Yinji didn't say anything. Hua Xiaoheng stood beside her and said dryly to Speaker Long, "Speaker Long, Yinji grew up with me. In all these years, no one has ever laid a finger on her." Speaker Long was a bit embarrassed but still tried to convince Hua Xiaoheng. "Xiaoheng, I said today was an exception. I didn't expect Tan Dongbang to even use this kind of trick. I underestimated his shamelessness." Gun Yinji smiled. It seemed that Speaker Long had still downplayed Special Assistant Yang's actions. It made sense to push all the blame to the office of the Prime Minister, but it wasn't completely correct. The troublemaking trio from the office of the Prime Minister had already been causing trouble in the Senate for 2 days. For the past 2 days, Special Assistant Yang had allowed them to cause trouble without taking any concrete measures. In the end, he had even sent her, an intern who had just started working at the Senate, to deal with it. Shouldn't this kind of behavior be investigated? It was either malfeasance or incompetence. You had to choose one. She looked at Huo Xiaoheng with dissatisfaction and wanted nothing more than to criticize Special Assistant Yang in front of Speaker Long. Huo Xiaoheng's fierce gaze immediately stopped her. Gu Nianji pouted and lowered her head to look at the small paper bag in her hand. Inside was the medicine that the gentle female doctor had prescribed for her. Huo Xiaoheng finally said to Speaker Long, "Speaker Long is still very far-sighted. You asked General Ji for help because you were prepared for a rainy day." Speaker Long laughed. "Xiaoheng, I didn't expect you to know how to flatter people too." "I don't flatter people. I've always been a man of my word." Huo Xiaoheng spoke so righteously that even Gu Nianji was almost intimidated by him. Speaker Long raised his hand and patted Huo Xiaoheng's shoulder vigorously. "Xiaoheng, it's fortunate that you came this time. Otherwise, the one who would be bombarded by the news would be me, Old Long." Thinking about it made him feel a lingering fear. If they had handled the problem the same way they had in the past, the Senate would have been the ones being denounced by the entire nation in the news media. Perhaps it wouldn't be the cabinet that would be disbanded first. Instead, it would be the Senate that would be disbanded and the Senate would be elected first. Speaker Long only felt his back become drenched in sweat. "Speaker Long, you're still here? The national television station wants to do a live interview with you. Hurry back to the Senate." Special Assistant Yang ran over, panting, to take Speaker Long back to the Senate building. Speaker Long nodded solemnly and turned to Gu Nianji. "Nianji, do you want me to give you a few days off to recuperate?" Special Assistant Yang also quickly said apologetically, "Nianji, I'm really sorry for today. I've made you suffer. You were beaten up in the Senate, so it's considered a work injury. The medical expenses will be reimbursed. Just give me the list." Gu Nianji shook her head. "Don't I have medical insurance? I used it to see it today." She then said to Speaker Long, "Speaker Long, this injury is nothing. I'll go back and rest for half a day. I'll go back to work as usual tomorrow. Is that okay?" Of course, I couldn't ask for more. Speaker Long was very happy and waved at her. "Then I'll trouble Xiaoheng to take you home. Is that okay? I'll see you tomorrow." "Okay. Speaker Long, I'll see you tomorrow." Gu Nianji also smiled and waved goodbye. "Yes, I have medical insurance. I almost forgot." Special Assistant Yang smiled awkwardly and nodded to Huo Xiaoheng. He escorted Speaker Long out of the hospital. Gu Nianji watched their figures disappear into the corridor before looking up to ask Huo Xiaoheng, "Why didn't you let me speak just now? What do you want to say? Complain?" Huo Xiaoheng walked unhurriedly to the elevator. No matter how bad Special Assistant Yang is, he still worked in the Senate for nearly 10 years. You're not thinking of removing him from office just because of this, are you? This was the second update, and the monthly vote was 5,400. A reminder about the recommendation votes and the monthly vote. Today was still the third update. The third update at 7 p.m. Chapter 1003. Gu Nianji was speechless. That was what she really thought. However, on second thought, Huo Xiaoheng's words were true wisdom. Regardless of whether or not Special Assistant Yang was talented, he had been the head of the Senate Secretariat for many years. Just like Secretary Chao's position beside General Ji, Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liang's positions beside Huo Xiaoheng, Special Assistant Yang was also Speaker Long's favorite. Although he wasn't the only confidant, he was still one of them. Gu Nianji followed Huo Xiaoheng into the elevator and sighed. Reaching out to press the button for the first floor, she said, "I understand. I'll be careful." Huo Xiaoheng squinted at her. "This is what you mean by being careful?" He was so careful that his face was swollen on the first day. Gu Nianji touched the right side of her face guiltily and said sheepishly, "Actually, what I'm most worried about is that it recovers too quickly." "What's there to worry about?" Huo Xiaoheng looked away. "Isn't that the truth?" Gu Nianji puffed up her cheeks. "Huo Xiao, you have to piss me off, right? I'm an injured patient." Huo Xiaoheng was distracted by her coquettish grumbling. He calmed himself down for a while before saying, "I won't let you suffer, and neither will anyone else. There are many ways to vent your anger. Why did you choose this one? In Hua Xiaoheng's opinion, harming his own body to achieve his goal was putting the cart before the horse. What was the point of killing 1,000 enemies and injuring 800? Gun Yanji averted her eyes guiltily. It was an emergency at the time, so I didn't know that was their plan. I thought the spokesperson of the Prime Minister's residence should have some sense of shame. Don't ever think about this when you work in the parliament. Hua Xiaoheng smiled faintly. Some people's bottom line is always moving forward. You'll never be able to wait for the day when it hits bottom. I understand. Gun Yanji glanced at Hua Xiaoheng again to make sure he still didn't know her true intentions. She sighed softly and took out her phone to play with. He Jichu had returned from his hometown for the Lunar New Year and had planned to stay in the Huaxia Empire from then on. He would wholeheartedly pursue Gun Yanji and win back his fiancée, only to discover that Gun Yanji was already married. The blow was like a bolt from the blue to him. He had to restrain himself from losing his composure in front of Gun Yanji last night. He had to fight with Hua Xiaoheng to ease the knot in his heart. However, when he returned to his suite in the professor's building, he couldn't take it anymore and had a fever. When he woke up from his slumber, covered in sweat, he found that it was still dark outside. How long did he sleep? He Jichu picked up the watch on the bedside table and looked at it. 8 o'clock? It seemed that he had slept almost the entire day. He remembered it was 2 in the morning when he went home and went to bed. It was 8 o'clock in the evening, and he had slept for 18 hours. His whole body was drenched in sweat. He crawled out of the quilt and touched his forehead. He no longer had a fever, but he felt a little dizzy. He was still very hungry. In fact, he hadn't eaten for 24 hours. He was so hungry that his stomach began to hurt. Ijichu finally got up and went to the bathroom to take a hot shower. When he came out, he saw that the kitchen was empty. There wasn't even instant noodles. He had no choice but to pick up his phone and order a sumptuous takeout for himself. Putting down his phone, he sat on the sofa and picked up the remote control to finally turn on the curved wall-mounted TV on the opposite wall. Mr. Lin, what do you think of this incident? This morning, the spokesman from the office of the Prime Minister caused trouble in the Senate and even injured a female staff member. He turned on the news channel and was discussing the day's current politics with the invited political guest. Ijichu wasn't interested at all. He looked at the extremely attractive face coldly and changed the channel. Mr. Nyo, what do you think of the assault at the Senate building today? What was going on? Both of the stations were showing it. Was it rare for the Senate to fight? It would be news if the Senate didn't fight, okay? Ijichu cursed in his heart. His hands were like rolling a ball wheel as he quickly flipped through all the channels. Other than the channel that played retarded cartoons for children, almost all the channels were broadcasting the news of a female staff member of the Senate being assaulted by the spokesman from the office of the Prime Minister at the Senate building. However, they had already entered the second stage of the news, which was the stage of political analysis. The various guests and anchors were in full swing, and the viewpoints of both sides clashed. Ijichu shook his head and picked up his phone to scroll through Weibo. As expected, Weibo was also flooded with this news. However, the difference was that the netizens on Weibo were focused on different things than the actual news. 8 of the top 10 trending topics were related to this incident. The main style of the trending topics was this: hashtag restoration of the side profile of female staff member who was assaulted in the Senate. Hashtag female staff member who was assaulted in the Senate has legs of 2.8 meters long. Hashtag female staff member who was assaulted in the Senate is said to be an intern. Hashtag be university law student. I know female staff member who was assaulted in the Senate. Hijichu was still indifferent to the first few trending topics, but his hand froze when he saw the words intern and be university law student. He had a bad idea. How many B University law students had become interns in the Senate this year? Hijichu quickly opened all the Weibo posts related to this incident. When he saw the screenshot of the assault broadcast by the national television station, he immediately recognized that the female staff member who was assaulted was indeed Gun Yanji. They had only been apart for less than a day. How could she be injured? Hijichu looked at the short videos on Weibo. Other than the screenshot of the assault, the second most popular video was the one of Speaker Long and Hua Xiaoheng escorting Gun Yanji to the ambulance. Hijichu finally sighed in relief when he saw Hua Xiaoheng by Gun Yanji's side. He lay on the back of the sofa in the corner with one arm resting on his forehead. His teeth were clenched, and the suppressed expression on his face was somewhat ferocious. He tried hard to calm himself down before picking up his phone to call Gun Yanji. Gun Yanji was currently resting in her suite in the Hepingli precinct. After returning home in the afternoon, she washed up and went to bed. She had just woken up. Hua Xiaoheng had made her dinner and placed it in the fridge. She could heat it up and eat it. As soon as she woke up, she received a call from Hua Xiaoheng requesting a video chat to watch her eat dinner. Gu Nianji had no choice but to agree and chat with Hua Xiaoheng while eating dinner. Hua Xiao, what are you doing? I'm still at the Senate. Hua Xiaoheng had already eaten dinner and was worried that Gu Nianji had overslept, so he made the call. She seemed to be in good condition at the moment. Her face, which had been red and swollen during the day, had now returned to normal. Fair, delicate and glossy like ice porcelain. Because she had slept for the whole afternoon, her skin, which was like ice porcelain, rippled with a faint pink. It was like a few smears of pink painted on white jade ice porcelain with a meticulous brush. It reminded people of osmanthus in autumn and peach blossoms from 10 miles away. It was completely impossible to tell that she had been beaten in the morning. If the people from the office of the Prime Minister saw Gu Nianji like this, they would definitely stir up trouble. Hua Xiaoheng looked at her for a while before ending the video chat and putting on his Bluetooth headset to talk to her. Gu Nianji put her phone on speakerphone and chatted with Hua Xiaoheng on and off. She only hurriedly said to Hua Xiaoheng when He Zhichu called, "I have a call coming in. Hua Xiao, I'll hang up now." She hung up on Hua Xiaoheng before answering He Zhichu's call. As soon as the call connected, He Zhichu immediately said, "Nianji, why did you get beaten up at the Senate today? I saw the motion video screenshot and thought that you could have dodged it. What the hell are you planning?" Gu Nianji was speechless. She could have dodged it, but if she had dodged it, how was she supposed to continue with the show? Gu Nianji waited for a whole day, but that person didn't call her. You're pretty good at keeping your cool. However, she wasn't worried. That person would call her sooner or later. If he didn't call, she could add fuel to the fire. She still hadn't forgotten that her true purpose of being an intern at the Senate was to stop Kai Songyin from suing. It was the third watch. It was the end of the month, so she reminded her of the recommendation votes and monthly votes. It was still the third watch. Chapter 1004. Professor He, you think too highly of me. How could I have avoided it? Gu Nianji secretly made a face and said with a smile, "My face still hurts." He Zhichu was speechless. He wanted to go see her, but remembered that his fever had just subsided. If it was a viral cold, it could be contagious. After a while, he said to Gu Nianji, "Turn on the video and let me see your face." Gu Nianji giggled and turned on the video on her phone. She said with ill intentions, "You have to be mentally prepared. Don't be scared by me." He Zhichu was mentally prepared, but when he saw Gu Nianji's youthful and flawless face on the phone screen, he knew he had fallen for her trap. Naughty. He Zhichu scolded her dryly, but he wasn't angry, nor was he unhappy or embarrassed by her teasing. He had been too worried and had forgotten about Gu Nianji's special constitution. But they did hit you, right? He Zhichu's fingers caressed Gu Nianji's beautiful oval face on the phone screen. Does it hurt? It hurts, of course it hurts. I'm not made of iron, how can I not feel pain? Gu Nianji took an exaggerated breath. But it doesn't really hurt. It's much better than the previous injuries. This didn't comfort He Zhichu. Instead, it made him even more depressed. He looked at Gu Nianji for a while before asking, "Then do you still want to go to the Senate?" "Of course, why wouldn't I go? If I just leave like this, wouldn't I have been beaten for nothing?" Gu Nianji pointed to the right side of her face. "Speaker Long said this isn't over. So I have to keep an eye on it in case someone with ulterior motives ends it." He Zhichu sensed that there was a hidden meaning in her words and asked keenly, "Is it your colleague who wants to mess with you?" Gu Nianji was speechless. Was her meaning that obvious? That wasn't good. Gu Nianji held the phone and lay down on the bed. She smiled and changed the topic. "Professor He, although Speaker Long said this isn't over and the Senate will come forward to seek justice for me, I can't just sit around and wait for someone else to seek justice for me. What do you want to do?" He Zhichu understood immediately. Gu Nianji wanted to sue someone again? "I want to spread the word that in addition to suing the person who hit me, the Prime Minister and Mrs. Prime Minister will also have to bear joint responsibility and demand a large amount of compensation from the office of the Prime Minister." If that person still didn't take the bait, she could only take the initiative to attack. He Zhichu only had one word for what Gu Nianji wanted to do. He nodded without hesitation. "Okay. Do you want to make a statement or should I do it for you?" "You're my secret weapon, so I have to hide it first." Gu Nianji giggled. "I'll go to work at the Senate tomorrow and spread the word through the media." Not long after she hung up with He Zhichu, Ma Chichi called. Nianji, are you okay? Ma Qiqi had seen Gu Nianji on the news and had been worried about her. However, Yin Shixiang had told her to contact Gu Nianji at night, so she had waited patiently until now. Gu Nianji almost said she was fine, but she changed her words when the words were on the tip of her tongue. She said tactfully, "I'm okay. It doesn't hurt anymore." How can those people from the office of the Prime Minister be so perverted? Ma Qiqi was indignant. They can be so heavy-handed to a woman. Don't hit people in the face. They're breaking all kinds of taboos. Gu Nianji nodded. Qiqi, you weren't there at the time. Those people were indeed perverts. Their words were unbearable. Prime Minister Tan is cutting off all means of retreat. He doesn't even care about his reputation. He cares about his reputation? Ma Qiqi snickered. That video of his was so embarrassing. How could he still have any reputation? But to be honest, I also admire these politicians. They're so thick-skinned that normal people can't compare. If this had happened to a normal person, they'd probably be so ashamed that they'd want to commit suicide. Look at Prime Minister Tan. Not only did he refuse to commit suicide, but he also refused to step down. He didn't even help the wall, but he helped him. That's for sure. The first key to being a politician is to be thick-skinned. Normal people care about their reputation, so they can't do this kind of difficult work. Gu Nianji joked with Ma Qiqi for a while. Ma Qiqi saw that Gu Nianji was in good spirits and finally relaxed. It's getting late. You should rest. Are you resting at home tomorrow? I'll come and see you. Gu Nianji quickly said, I still have to go to work at the Senate tomorrow. I'll be home on the weekend. Do you want to come? You still have to go to work tomorrow? Is your injury okay? Ma Qiqi was very worried. Do you need to apply medicine? How could Gu Nianji see people with a face full of medicine? Gu Nianji smiled and winked. I have a mask. I'll wear it tomorrow. Ma Qiqi suddenly remembered the footage of Gu Nianji walking out of the hospital on TV. She had indeed been wearing a black and white panda mask. Okay. If it's nothing serious, of course going out to work is better than letting your imagination run wild at home. Ma Qiqi knew that Gu Nianji couldn't stay idle, so she reminded her again and again. She promised to visit her on the weekend before hanging up. Gu Nianji looked at her watch. It was already 10 p.m., so it was time to sleep. She yawned and lay down to sleep. She slept so soundly that she didn't even have a dream. She woke up very early the next morning, but she purposely waited until 8 before leaving the house. Anyway, with her current condition, no one would really care if she was late or not. She wore the black and white panda mask Wu Xiaoheng had given her. She didn't drive herself but took the subway to the vicinity of the Senate building, then walked over on foot. As she walked, she gave the reporters ample time to recognize her. Because when she left the hospital yesterday, she had been wearing the same black and white panda mask. It was very distinctive. Looking at her figure and demeanor, it was very similar to the female Senate staff member who had been beaten up yesterday. When everyone looked at the badge hanging on her chest, they immediately realized that she was Gu Nianji, the female Senate staff member who had been beaten up yesterday. So the reporters swarmed over and aimed their microphones and cameras at Gu Nianji as they asked questions. May I ask if you are Miss Gu? What do you think about yesterday's incident? Miss Gu, the office of the Prime Minister has already bailed out the spokesperson who hit you, and the police station has not filed any charges. May I ask if you have anything to say? Gu Nianji stopped in her tracks and looked steadily at the reporter who said the person who hit her had already been bailed out. She replied calmly, Are you sure? I haven't heard of this news. I'm sure. Does Miss Gu want to see the source of the news? The reporter, who wanted to see the world in chaos, happily took out his phone to show Gu Nianji the source of the news. Gu Nianji looked down for a while before looking up. At that moment, everyone could clearly see that the pair of large watery eyes above the mask were already a bit red. She asked in a choked voice. So he hit me and it's just going to be left unsettled? I'm sorry, but I can't accept this kind of result. I want Prime Minister Tan and Mrs. Prime Minister to know that although I'm just a normal civilian, my personal safety cannot be violated. You hit me, so you must pay the price. I will hire a lawyer to file a lawsuit against the spokesperson from the office of the Prime Minister and Mrs. Prime Minister who hit me. You can wait for my lawyer's letter. The reporters were instantly excited when they heard that. He had waited for the headlines so early in the morning. Therefore, in high spirits, they began to broadcast the scene that happened in front of the Parliament building in the morning to their respective television stations and media outlets. The news that Gu Nianji said she was going to sue the spokesperson who hit her and even Prime Minister Tan and the Prime Minister's wife spread like wildfire online. Gu Nianji hadn't even walked into the Senate building when Special Assistant Yang, who was in his office, learned about the scene that had taken place at the entrance of the building. He couldn't help but slap the table angrily. She's not going to let it go. The Prime Minister's residence has already said that they want to negotiate with us. Is she crazy? Tell. You only know how to sue. She made it sound like she could win if she wanted to sue. It's just to show off. The people in the Secretariat of the Senate looked at each other, not daring to respond. They had very complicated feelings about Gu Nianji being beaten up. As ordinary staff, of course, they hoped to severely punish the culprit, so that their own safety could be guaranteed, and they wouldn't have to fight for nothing. But as Gu Nianji's colleagues, they didn't want to see a new intern get so much attention. Therefore, they all remained silent and didn't support or oppose it. Special Assistant Yang was well versed in the art of office survival. He vented his temper and expressed his stance before saying to his secretary, "When Miss Gu arrives, ask her to come to my office." Gu Nianji had just walked into the secretariat when she was taken to see Special Assistant Yang. "Miss Gu, you are a staff member of the Senate. You can't represent the Senate to casually speak to media reporters outside." Special Assistant Yang tried his best to maintain a kind expression as he spoke to Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji looked around in shock. "I didn't represent the Senate to speak outside. Is there some misunderstanding, Special Assistant Yang?" Whose mouth was so long. Gu Nianji had wanted to go talk to Speaker Long herself, but these people had already reported her? The corners of Special Assistant Yang's mouth twitched. "Do you want me to pull up the video? Although the place where you spoke was outside the Senate building, that place is also monitored." Gu Nianji nodded calmly. "Sure, you play it, I'll watch." Was she not going to give up until she saw the coffin? Special Assistant Yang clenched his teeth and also became serious. He asked someone to pull up the surveillance video from outside and opened it on his computer. He said to Gu Nianji, "Miss Gu, look at it yourself. Are you still going to say that you didn't represent the Senate to speak to the media outside?" The computer showed Gu Nianji's face with a mask on, but her voice was very clear. It was the video of her saying that she wanted to send a lawyer's letter to the spokesperson, Prime Minister Tan, and the Prime Minister's wife. "Yes, what about it?" Gu Nianji pretended to be confused. "I want to sue these people. Is there something wrong with that?" "There's nothing wrong with that, but you can't represent the Senate to speak nonsense outside." Special Assistant Yang was furious. Wasn't this girl very smart and capable? Why does it seem like there's something wrong with his brain? Gu Nianji laughed and shook her finger. "Special Assistant Yang, I think you've misunderstood. I spoke to the reporters on my own behalf, not on behalf of the Senate." "Okay, then the cost of your lawyer's lawsuit will be entirely borne by you. It's not a financial burden for the Senate." Special Assistant Yang immediately made the decision and looked at her with a victorious expression. She would have to pay for the lawsuit with the office of the Prime Minister herself. This girl was just waiting to go bankrupt. The Senate wouldn't pay a single cent anyway. "I'm a lawyer myself and a trial lawyer at that." Special Assistant Yang, what kind of misunderstanding do you have about my abilities? Gu Nianji pouted in disdain. "If there's nothing else, I'm going to work." She turned to leave without waiting for Special Assistant Yang to speak. Gu Nianji's speech quickly calmed the small wave of commotion in the Senate building. However, it caused a huge uproar online and at the office of the Prime Minister. "Mommy? Gu Nianji really wants to sue you and Daddy?" Tan Guoren had been at the Senate for the past few days. She had been invited out yesterday, but she had been waiting outside the Senate building. She was also very sorry about the assault and had been looking for an opportunity to apologize to Gu Nianji. However, her mother, Kai Songyin, wouldn't allow her to go. Kai Songyin didn't take Gu Nianji's threat to heart at all. "She wants to sue me and the Prime Minister? She'll have to clean up her own scandal first." Kai Songyin was also waiting to sue the blogger so she could show off the short article about Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng. If it wasn't for the assault that had suddenly occurred yesterday, she would have gone to court to file the case. Now the office of the Prime Minister was busy with the public relations crisis of the spokesperson of the office of the Prime Minister assaulted a female Senate staff member. They were so busy that Kai Songyin's plan to sue the blogger was temporarily put on hold. Kai Songyin had to rush to a meeting with the media bosses to ask for their support and try to fight again. She could only hastily comfort Tan Guoren. "Little darling, it's fine. Let her sue. We have your cousin, so we're not afraid." She then left. However, Tanguerin felt that this was their fault from the start. Although she had been outside the door at the time, it was no different from being there. She had seen the video, so it was their fault. If they had to sue, they would definitely lose. Kai Songyin's perfunctory attitude made her feel that the situation was urgent. The entire office of the Prime Minister was in a mess because of this incident. They couldn't even spare any manpower for the most important temporary election campaign. Tanguerin really wanted to share her parents' worries. She hesitated at the office of the Prime Minister for a while before finally sneaking out alone and heading to the Senate building. This was the first 3,800-word update. The monthly votes and updates had all been filled up. There were 2 updates today. The second update at 7 p.m. It was the end of the month. Everyone hurry up and vote. Chapter 1005. Tanguerin drove her pink-blue Bentley sports car to a stop near the Senate building. The entrance to the Senate building was almost completely surrounded by all the major media organizations. She got out of the car and looked around silently for a long time, but couldn't find a way to sneak in. She would be recognized as soon as she passed by those people. It would be impossible to find Gunyenji then. Tanguerin looked down to take out her phone and rubbed it a few times before swiping it open to find Gunyenji's number. She had never called Gunyenji before, but she had to make an exception this time. Gunyenji sat in her seat and looked at the materials. The Secretariat had an office area on the upper floor of the Senate building. Interns and junior secretaries were all in the lobby, and only senior secretaries and above had their own individual offices. Gunyenji didn't sit for long before her phone rang. She picked it up to see it was an unfamiliar number. Gunyenji smiled immediately. The person she had been waiting for had finally arrived. However, she didn't answer the call immediately. Instead, she calmly closed her computer and carried her small bag before leaving the office area to answer the call in the rest area. Tanguerin called twice before Gunyenji finally picked up. "Hello, may I ask who this is?" Gunyenji asked directly. Tanguerin replied somewhat awkwardly, "I am Tanguerin. Miss Gu, is it convenient for you? There are some things I would like to discuss with you." "Miss Tanguerin? Why are you looking for me? You can tell me over the phone." Gunyenji purposely acted nonchalant and didn't eagerly agree to Tanguerin's request, although that was her true goal. If Tanguerin still didn't call or come to find her today, she planned to take the initiative and talk to Tanguerin. As expected, Tanguerin became even more anxious. "Miss Gu, I really came to apologize. When are you free? I can wait." Gunyenji pretended to look at her phone. "How about I check my work schedule?" What kind of work schedule did an intern have? Her words could only fool a sheltered flower like Tanguerin. However, Tanguerin believed her without a doubt and immediately said, "Sure, go ahead. I'll wait." Gunyenji waited for another 5 minutes before saying to Tanguerin on the other end of the line, "I have half an hour to eat around 11 in the afternoon. Can you wait?" There was still an hour before 11 o'clock. Tanguerin quickly nodded. "No problem. Where shall we meet?" Gunyenji looked at her phone. There were restaurants and cafes in the Senate building, so she didn't want to talk about this outside. She was worried that the walls had ears and it would be difficult to control. The Parliament building was different. It was safe and the surveillance was limited to the work area. Coffee shops and restaurants were considered non-working areas, so there were no surveillance cameras. "How about this, you come in from the back door around 11 o'clock, and I'll ask the guard to open the door for you." As Gunyenji spoke, she sent an email to the security guard at the back door of the building and asked him to let Tanguerin in. After arranging everything, Gunyenji put down her phone and wrote a few summaries. Soon it was 11 o'clock. She stood up, put on her small bag and went downstairs to the cafe downstairs. It was still early for lunch, but breakfast had already been sold out, so the entire living area was quiet. Gunyenji sat by the window in the cafe and saw Tanguerin arrive not long after. Pulling out a chair and sitting across from Gunyenji, Tanguerin asked apologetically, "Did you wait long?" Gunyenji hated this kind of idiotic small talk, but she didn't hit someone who was smiling at her. Also, she wanted to get information from Tanguerin, so she couldn't just start a fight. Gunyenji smiled and shook her head. "We set it at 11 o'clock. I just came down." Tanguerin looked at her enviously and said, "Punctuality is a king's virtue. You are very punctual." Although she knew Tanguerin didn't have any ill intentions, Gunyenji still felt like she deserved a beating when she said that. What did she mean by, "You are very punctual, Miss Gurin? Didn't you ask me out?" Didn't we agree to meet at the cafe at 11 o'clock? So I'm the only one abiding by these words. Gu Nianji tolerated it and picked up the milk and meat floss cake she ordered for Tanguerin. When the food arrived, Tanguerin was very surprised. Miss Gu, how did you know I was hungry? She then asked, where's yours? Gu Nianji was speechless. She didn't know. She was just making deductions based on common sense. It was almost lunchtime, so even if Tanguerin had eaten breakfast when she came over, she should be hungry by now. Tanguerin hadn't eaten breakfast at all today. Therefore, Tanguerin didn't hesitate to pick up her knife and fork to drink the milk and eat the meat floss cake. Gu Nianji chatted with her on and off until she finished drinking the milk and eating the meat floss cake. Gu Nianji finally asked, Miss Tan, did you need me for something? Tanguerin nodded. It's nothing serious. I just wanted to apologize to you. Apologize? Gu Nianji raised a brow. Why are you apologizing to me? It's like this. I'm also very sorry that you were accidentally injured yesterday. I'm really sorry. Tanguerin stood up and bowed to Gu Nianji in apology. Gu Nianji raised her hand to lower it. Only a pair of bright eyes could be seen through the mask on her face. It wasn't you who did it. You don't have to apologize. Gu Nianji paused before continuing, but I can't be beaten for nothing. Tanguerin's heart tightened. She placed her hands on her lap and almost twisted them into a ball as she muttered, but I believe Mr. Chow didn't mean it. Can't you just be merciful and let this matter go? Mr. Chow was one of the troublemakers from the office of the Prime Minister's Public Relations Office. He was originally handed over to the police station by Hua Xiaoheng, but he was bailed out by the office of the Prime Minister early that morning. You believe he didn't mean it, but I don't believe it. Tanguerin, if you had experienced what I went through, you would know that verbal apologies are the most useless. Gu Nianji touched her mask. I'm a perfectly fine person, and I was almost disfigured by him. Tell me, how can I take this lying down? Tanguerin's eyes widened as she looked at Gu Nianji and quickly said, I know you're very sad and in pain, but these things are already in the past. Even if you let him go to jail, you can't possibly get back at him for that slap. Gu Nianji tilted her head to look at Tanguerin and said in legal jargon, Justice may be late, but it's never absent. The justice I want is according to the law. Those who should be jailed will be jailed, those who should be fined will be fined, and those who should be executed will be executed. I don't mean anything else. Tanguerin became even more nervous. She bit her lip and thought about it for a while before saying, But you can sue Mr. Chow. Why do you have to drag my dad and mom into this? They didn't hit you. It was the second update. The monthly votes had all been filled up and there were only 2 updates today. It was the end of the month. Everyone hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Chapter 1006. Looking at Tanguerin's clear, innocent eyes and her almost ignorant question, Gu Nianji sighed softly from the bottom of her heart. She never had the patience to talk to people like Tanguerin. Moreover, the scene of Tanguerin and Hua Xiaoheng getting off the plane was still an indescribable pain in her heart. No one could understand that when she had walked out of the Alps with her life on the line, when she had been electrocuted by ALS of the German Federal Intelligence Service, when her life was hanging by a thread, and when she had been prepared to die for Hua Xiaoheng, she had seen that scene with such ease. It had been a huge psychological impact on her. With just a gentlemanly gesture, her entire emotional world had collapsed. At that moment, she truly sank into boundless despair and could no longer continue with Hua Xiaoheng. Rationally, she understood that Hua Xiaoheng was only being polite and had made an unintentional mistake. Therefore, Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi couldn't understand her decision to break up later. She didn't explain it to them either. Those who understood would naturally understand, but those who didn't would only think she was making a fuss over a minor issue and didn't understand Hua Xiaoheng no matter how much she tried to explain. So why waste so much time talking? Gu Nianji only knew that she couldn't rationally understand Hua Xiaoheng without considering the cause and effect of the incident. Only by breaking up with Hua Xiaoheng and completely leaving him emotionally could she have a chance of surviving that kind of bone-piercing pain. Otherwise, she knew she wouldn't be able to survive. She would be so desperate that she would end her own life. In reality, the decision to break up had indeed saved her. When she no longer saw Hua Xiaoheng as her only pillar of support and faith, she was able to re-evaluate this relationship and reconsider the path she wanted to take in the future. She was also able to calmly sit in front of Tanguerin and quietly lead her into her trap instead of wanting to strangle her as soon as they met. Leaning back on the soft chair in the cafe, Gu Nianji shook her head. Miss Tan, Do you think Mr. Chow was able to hit me because of him alone? Isn't that the case? Tan Guirin asked in confusion. My parents were at the Prime Minister's official residence at the time and not at the Senate building. What do you think my parents have to do with it? Let me put it this way. Gu Nianji looked at Tan Guirin coolly and used the patience she had for a kindergartner to ask, do you know why Mr. Chow came to the Senate building at the time and what identity he was using? Tan Guirin thought about it and said, I know that. He's the spokesperson for the office of the Prime Minister. He was there to discuss with the Senate about dissolving the cabinet and restarting the election. That's right. Gu Nianji nodded. Then who sent them? It's my daddy and mommy. Tan Guirin blurted out before her expression changed. She immediately said, but my daddy and mommy didn't tell him to hit anyone. Gu Nianji thought to herself, yes, I didn't ask them to beat people up. I only asked them to cause trouble, until the people in the Senate couldn't take it anymore and got into physical conflict with them. Of course, she couldn't tell Tan Guirin that because Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin definitely didn't know about their motives. She was just a chess piece in her parents' hands. Mr. Chow came to perform official duties, so everything that happened during his official duties was related to the office of the Prime Minister and also related to the person in charge of the office of the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Tan. Gu Nianji made the final decision. Just like if he was injured at the Senate this time, then when he returned to the office of the Prime Minister, it would be treated as an official injury. Do you understand? Tan Guirin bit her lip. She understood the official injury, but she couldn't understand the first part about Mr. Chow's assault being related to Prime Minister Tan and Kai Songyin. Or perhaps she didn't want to understand. Since it's all related to the office of the Prime Minister, of course I have to sue the person in charge of the office of the Prime Minister as well, which is Prime Minister Tan and his wife. Gu Nianji's slender and fair fingers tapped the fine porcelain edge of her coffee cup. Her eyes curved as she softened her tone. However, Miss Tan is worried about your parents and is a filial girl. I can understand that. Tan Guirin heard the first part of Gu Nianji's words and thought there was no other way. However, when she heard the second part of Gu Nianji's words, her hope was ignited. She leaned forward and said in surprise, yes, my daddy and mommy are so good to me. I really hope I can help them. Miss Gu, I beg you don't sue my parents, okay? What kind of compensation do you want? I'll give it to you however much you want. As Tan Guirin spoke, she took out several bank cards and even a property certificate from her ever-present Celine handbag and placed them in front of Gu Nianji. As long as you don't sue my parents, I'll give all of this to you. Gu Nianji's eyes flitted over the bait Tan Guirin had set out and returned to Tan Guirin's beautiful and innocent face. After a while, she pushed Tan Guirin's things back and scolded, Miss Tan, what are you doing? I want to sue Mr. Chow. Your parents are only involved. You don't have to do this, do you? But, they're in a lot of trouble now. Tan Guirin saw that Gu Nianji didn't want her things and was about to cry. I don't want to make things worse for them. Miss Gu, I beg you, I'm really begging you. Tan Guirin panicked and stood up from her seat, almost kneeling before Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji quickly helped her up and said angrily, Miss Tan, do you want everyone in the cafe to think that I did something to you? I haven't even recovered from being slapped in the face by your office of the Prime Minister. Tan Guirin grabbed Gu Nianji's hand tightly and sobbed. Miss Gu, you don't have parents, so you don't know what parents can do for their children. When I was kidnapped in the United States, they did everything they could to save me. They would do anything for me and I would do anything for them too. It's just Anil, I don't care. What did she mean by, you don't have parents, so you don't know what parents can do for their children? The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched as she felt like she had been screwed. She suddenly didn't feel any guilt toward Tan Guirin at all. Gu Nianji helped Tan Guirin to her seat and withdrew her hand to sit across from Tan Guirin. She said quietly, what Miss Tan said makes sense. I heard that Miss Tan went missing in the United States. It was also your parents who went through so much trouble to find you, right? Other than your parents, no one else would be able to do something like that. That was the truth. Gu Nianji calmed down and felt that Tan Guirin was right. She thought indifferently that she didn't have parents, so she was lost in the German Alps. She could only rely on herself, and no one would descend from the heavens to save her. Gu Nianji picked up the silver spoon and stirred the already cooled cappuccino. She began to ask about the details of Tan Guirin's disappearance. That was her true goal. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader and hit the snake where it hurts. Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin's weakness was Tan Guirin. Gu Nianji had seen the news and knew that Tan Guirin had been kidnapped. Since she had been kidnapped, There was a big story to be written about. Didn't Kai Songyin like pornographic novels? Gu Nianji planned to present her with a captivity play starring her daughter herself to satisfy Kai Songyin's voyeurism. If Kai Songyin dared to sue the original blogger and expose Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's pornographic novels, then the Prime Minister's daughter's pornographic novels would definitely have a bigger market. Not only would she have words, but she would also have a personal statement from the Prime Minister's daughter. Gu Nianji discreetly turned on the recording pen and aimed it in Tan Guiren's direction. Tan Guiren wiped her face with a tissue and wiped away her tears. She said quietly, "Yes, it was my daddy and mommy who found someone to save me when I was in the United States." Speaking of that time, she thought of Hua Xiaoheng and her mood improved slightly. "Can you tell me exactly what happened at that time?" Gu Nianji wanted to hear Tan Guiren tell the details of how she had been kidnapped and imprisoned. Tan Guiren's expression was a bit unnatural. She looked down and said, "Do I have to tell you? I don't have parents, so I don't know how much parents would do for their children. So you have to convince me with your own experience." Gu Nianji's fingers tapped lightly on the coffee table. She said coldly, "Otherwise I will sue your parents as well." Tan Guiren was frightened by Gu Nianji and quickly said, I'll tell you. She composed herself and her voice was a bit low and erratic. "That day I had a bit of a headache, so I went to sleep after taking a painkiller. Who knew that when I woke up I wouldn't be in the dormitory but in a very dirty room. There were many cages in that room and there was one person in each cage. Most of them were children and there were only 3 adults." Gu Nianji raised a brow. She had never heard of such a situation, so she became even more interested. "Cages? You said there were many cages in the room? What kind of cages?" "Dog cages. Slightly larger dog cages." Tan Guiren's expression became even more uncomfortable. "Who were the people in the small building?" Gu Nianji asked in detail. "What people? Of course they weren't good people." Tan Guiren recalled those lecherous eyes and the days when she didn't see the light of day in the Bronx. She couldn't help shuddering. "They were all very bad and wanted to bully me many times. But there was one person who was very nice. He always protected me and didn't let anyone touch me." "No. Until what?" Gu Nianji was a bit excited. "Details." Here came the details. "Until one day a bad person came and hit a child with a metal ruler. I couldn't take it anymore and begged him to stop hitting the child. In the end, the bad person stopped hitting the child and pounced on me." Tan Guiren tightened her hands on the front of her shirt. It was as if she could still feel the disgusting touch of that person's large, furry and sticky hands sliding across her face. "I resisted with all my might, but that person still ripped my shirt off." Tan Guiren lowered her head even more. Gu Nianji wasn't in a good mood either. There were many times when she wanted to turn off the recording pen and tell herself that it was Kai Songyin's fault. She couldn't blame it on Tan Guiren because Kai Songyin was also a pitiful person. However, logic told her that Kai Songyin's only weakness was her daughter, Tan Guiren. If she didn't want her and Hua Xiaoheng's reputations to be ruined by Kai Songyin, this was something she had to do. Gu Nianji hardened her heart and continued to ask, "And then? I originally thought that my chastity would be lost there, but then the person who treated me very well appeared and shot the bad person to death." Gu Nianji nodded. "You're very lucky." "I was." Tan Guiren looked up and smiled through her tears. "But I knew he was also a bad person and was in cahoots with them. You wanted me too. He wasn't a good person. The real good person was Major General Hua." The next day, Major General Hua appeared and braved a hail of bullets to save me. He was injured and fell into someone else's trap, so he could only run for his life in the United States. This was the 3,400 words of the first chapter. Today was the 3rd chapter, the last day of July. Dear friends, hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Today was also Monday. Recommendation votes, oh recommendation votes. At 1 p.m., the monthly vote was 5,700 plus chapters. At 7 p.m. the 3rd chapter. I'll continue to make up for the excess monthly votes next month with the 3rd chapter. P.S. Thank you to Molly0707 for tipping 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. This was the 1,000th chapter. How emotional. Chapter 1007. Gu Nianji felt like her heart was like an old engine. After a few thumps, it completely stopped beating. She sat across from Tan Guiren and heard her clear voice echoing in her ears. She watched her red lips open and close in front of her. She could hear everything she said, but she could not make sense of what she was saying. She was like a person with dyslexia. She could see every word in front of her, but she couldn't understand what they meant. She slowly sat up straight and gripped the silver spoon so tightly that it almost bent. As soon as Tanguerin mentioned Hua Xiaoheng, she couldn't control herself. That night, I didn't feel well and couldn't sleep. I thought I was going to die for sure. At that moment, the door was kicked open and a man as tall as a god stood at the door. He wore a helmet and a hood, and a pair of large sunglasses covered half of his face, making it impossible to see what he looked like. I didn't know who he was at the time. I sat up immediately and my heart almost jumped out of my throat. That man shot me and broke the lock of the cage. He reached out to me and said, "Miss Tan? Come with me quickly. I was sent by your father to save you." Miss Gu, you don't know how excited I was. At the moment of life and death, someone descended from the sky and said that my father had sent him to save me. I threw myself at him and hugged his leg without a care for my image. I begged him to save me. That place wasn't suitable for humans. Those people were all animals. They didn't even spare a child. She didn't know how many times she had replayed the scene of Hua Xiaoheng saving Tanguerin. Even now, every action and every word of conversation was vivid in her mind and engraved in her heart. Tanguerin reached out to grab Gu Nianji's hand and shook it. She said to Gu Nianji emotionally, "Miss Gu, do you understand how I feel? How many things have my daddy and mommy done for me? If they could get Major General Hua to save me, how could I turn a blind eye to my parents' plight? Miss Gu, I'm begging you, please don't sue my parents anymore, okay?" Gu Nianji finally snapped back to reality and quickly withdrew her hand from Tanguerin's, her body trembling slightly. Although her mind felt as if there were countless bees buzzing in it and she couldn't concentrate, she still tried to clear her thoughts and asked calmly, "You're saying that your father sent Major General Hua to the United States to rescue you? But at that time your father was only the Minister of Justice, not the Prime Minister. What authority did he have to send a Major General to save people abroad?" I'm not too sure about that." Tanguerin started to stutter. She suddenly remembered that her mommy had warned her not to tell anyone about Hua Xiaoheng saving her. Tanguerin stuck out her tongue guiltily. "Not sure?" Gu Nianji raised a brow and suppressed the discomfort and displeasure in her heart. Spreading her hands, she said to Tanguerin, "You don't know? Then it's hard for me to believe you. I'm telling the truth. I swear to God that I didn't lie to you." Tanguerin was frantic and raised her hand to swear. Gu Nianji grasped her swearing hand and shook her head. She said dryly, "Then tell me clearly. I'm a lawyer, so I only believe in evidence and logic. I won't believe anything without logic." It was obvious that Gu Nianji felt something was wrong when Hua Xiaoheng said he was sent by Tanguerin's father. In terms of authority, Tan Dongbang was still the Minister of Justice in the cabinet at the time, while Hua Xiaoheng was a major general in the military and the commander of the Special Operations Forces. Even if they were from the same system, Hua Xiaoheng's position wouldn't be higher than Tan Dongbang's, but it wouldn't be lower either. Who gave Tan Dongbang the authority to send Hua Xiaoheng overseas to save his daughter? Tanguerin was forced into a corner by Gu Nianji and remembered that Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng used to be boyfriend and girlfriend. They were so close so they couldn't be considered outsiders, right? It wouldn't matter even if she told her, right? Tanguerin gritted her teeth and said quietly, "Actually, it wasn't my father who had the authority to send Major General Hua to save me. He asked the military to help save me." "Really?" Gu Nianji discreetly pushed the recording pen closer to Tanguerin. "There are so many capable people in the military. Why did your father ask for Major General Hua?" Tanguerin blushed and said honestly, "My mommy said it was her friend who recommended him to her. She said Major General Hua was the best and as long as he went, he would definitely be able to save me." "Your mommy's friend? Who is it? Do you know him?" Gu Nianji propped her head on her hand and leaned against the coffee table. Her gaze was gentle but focused as she looked at Tanguerin. "I don't know him." Tanguerin shook her head. "My mommy works in the media and has many friends. She never lets me see them. Her life was actually very simple. All she did was study the piano, read books, go home from school and then go back to school. Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin had protected her too well. She was truly a princess in an ivory tower." Gu Nianji narrowed her eyes and wondered if she should believe Tanguerin. She felt like there was something else that couldn't be explained clearly. And she knew Hua Xiaoheng the best. If he didn't want to do something outside of his authority, no one could order him to do it. Was rescuing Tanguerin something within Hua Xiaoheng's authority? Gu Nianji didn't believe it. But if it was outside of his authority, why would he go? Gu Nianji quickly glanced at Tanguerin and felt very anxious. Could it be that Hua Xiaoheng really liked this innocent little white flower? Was that why he made an exception to save her? Or was there another reason she didn't know? Gunyanji remembered very clearly what happened at that time. One day Hua Xiaoheng suddenly left the country. In the beginning she guessed that Hua Xiaoheng went to New York for a mission, but Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi didn't confirm or deny it. Not long after she received Hua Xiao's scarf from Germany. Now she already knew that there was something wrong with the scarf from Germany. Although Hua Xiaoheng had indeed sent it to her, the shipping address he used wasn't Germany but France. In short, he wouldn't let her know that his true location was the United States. Because of this, Gunyanji was attracted to Germany. Later, she was tricked by a text message that seemed to be from Hua Xiaoheng to go to the Königssee near Munich and fall into the enemy's trap. What was different from Tangyuren's experience was that she didn't have a powerful father to send the capable Hua Xiaoheng to save her. Instead, she fell into the trap because of the scarf and text message from Major General Hua. Thinking about this, Gunyanji couldn't help but laugh at herself. See, this was the result of being infatuated. As an orphan without parents, she still needed to recognize her own identity and not be too infatuated. Being infatuated wasn't an illness, but being infatuated could kill. Gunyanji snorted softly. She was both pitiful and dissatisfied with her past self. Tangyuren waited for a long time and saw that Gunyanji still didn't speak. She couldn't help but quietly beg, "Miss Gu, can you really make an exception? Don't sue my parents. I'm begging you." Gunyanji looked down at the completely cooled cappuccino in front of her. The foam had already dissipated and revealed the true color underneath. It was like yellow muddy water and she had no appetite at all. After a while, Gunyanji finally stuttered, "Miss Tan, if you help me with something, I promise not to sue your parents." "Okay. As long as I can do it, I'll definitely help." Tangyuren was very surprised and immediately agreed. Gunyanji smiled. "Don't agree so quickly. I still have conditions." Tell me. Tangyuren wasn't afraid of Gunyanji's conditions. She was only worried that Gunyanji wouldn't mention anything and would only sue her parents. "Okay, if you can tell me who suggested to your mother that Major General Hua must go to the United States to save you, then I won't sue." Gunyanji shrugged. "I'm just very curious and want to know who thinks so highly of Major General Hua." Tangyuren thought about it. "I can ask my mother." "You can't let your mother know that I was the one who asked you to investigate." Gunyanji stated her conditions. "If your mommy and daddy find out that I want to know who this person is, then our agreement will be voided, and I will continue to sue them." "I know. I definitely won't tell." Tangyuren raised her hand to swear again. This time, Gunyanji didn't stop her and only nodded slightly. "Okay, I'll believe you this once." Although she didn't have much confidence in Tangyuren, she was certain that Hua Xiaoheng's incident should be kept a secret because it was Hua Xiaoheng's mission, and the missions of the Special Operations Forces were all confidential. Back then she had desperately tried to get information from Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi, but they were too tight-lipped and didn't reveal a single word. They just let her keep guessing. But Tangyuren still said it to her, someone who shouldn't have heard it. Therefore, Tangyuren's vow could only be taken lightly and not taken seriously. Her request was actually an additional condition. If Tangyuren could keep her promise and help her find that person, it would be the icing on the cake. If she couldn't, it didn't matter. She had already obtained the most important thing. Gunyanji turned off the recording pen and nodded at Tangyuren. "Okay, then I'll give you 3 days. Meet me here at the same time in 3 days." "Okay, I'll go ask now. I won't let them know it was because of you." Tangyuren nodded repeatedly. This time, because it involved Tangyuren acting on her own, she was very careful not to leak the secret. After Tangyuren left, Gunyanji also went upstairs. She sat in her seat alone and didn't do anything the entire day. She only stared blankly. When it was time to get off work, she was the first to leave the Senate building and return to her small suite in Hepingli. Turning on her computer, she calmly entered the hacking program and sent Kai Songyin's phone a recording of Tangyuren that afternoon. Of course, it was the edited recording of Tangyuren talking about being kidnapped. Gunyanji also sent a text. "Mrs. Tan, if you insist on suing the original blogger, your daughter's captivity play will soon go viral online." It was the second update, and the monthly votes had arrived at 5,700 plus updates. Today was the third update and it was the last day of July. Dear friends, hurry up and cast your monthly votes. Today was the last day of July, and they wouldn't have children even if they didn't cast their monthly votes. Today was also Monday. Recommendation votes, oh recommendation votes. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.